Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I am Matterall here with our group, starting with Sutonia. How you doing, Sutonia?
Hey, I'm good. Had a great time last night playing 3v3s with CCP Fozzie, actually. So I'm super happy.
Yeah, you were the team I was rooting for. We'll have to find out how you did. Also here is Rich Richmond.
Hello. I had a good time yesterday putting in some difficulties for a war decking group.
Well, see how much trouble you get into. We also have Hateless with us, Hateless Gaming.
Hey, guys.
All right. And off screen, we have Katia Sia, the legend. How you doing, Katia?
I'm good, thanks.
All right. Okay, today we're going to be talking about this week's news, and also we're going to talk about evasive maneuvers when you are being hunted, how you can survive, and what are some of the tricks that hunters use to try to catch you. And we're just going to have that discussion with some really, really proficient PvPers here with us. But we'll also go over this week's news. There's a lot of stuff going on that happened this last week, so we'll talk about some of the political ramifications of actions that happened during the week. And then we'll talk a little bit about space phenomena as well. All that on this next show of Talking in Stations. So we're going to do something a little different today because we want to take advantage of the guests that we have today. So we're going to go into the topic right away and do the news after that. And we basically want to look at player versus player interactions in space. And that's what everybody says this game is about that does that sort of thing. Of course, the industrialists say something different, but
it's player versus player regardless of what you're doing.
Okay, so whatever you're into, you are competing and out-competing each other in this game, which is why it's so addictive. It's almost like a simulator for mental battle. And part of that is hunting people down and surprising them, jumping on top of them and killing them. And then the other part of that is not letting that happen to you. So evasive maneuvers. Our first person to talk about this is Katia, and you know Katia from being the first player to really circumvent all of EVE Online or all of New Eden, and that means his character flew to every system in known space, whether that was high sec, low sec, null sec, but also wormholes as well, and did all that without ever getting killed. And because of that great accomplishment, the first ever statue of a player went up in New Eden, and it was a giant statue of Katia Sia. So it's good to have you here, Katia. And I have one more announcement to make. Katia is the latest member of Talking in Stations crew, so you're going to be seeing a lot more of Katia and content involving her. How you doing, Katia?
I'm doing great, thanks. I appreciate the introduction there.
Yeah. Welcome aboard. Great to have you here at TIS. All right, guys, free for all on this one. But let's start with Katia. How in the world did you manage to go and see every system in New Eden and actually not get killed? That was the footnote. That was an incredible footnote because most people get killed just going to the corner market.
Yeah, that's very true. For me, it was all about pre-planning. My goal going into it, originally my goal wasn't to not get caught, right? I fully was prepared of losing ships along the way. I had backup ships ready to go and stations because I figured if I got caught and killed, the best thing I could do is just jump in another ship and get right back out there, right? If I let it settle in, so to say, then I may not continue. So I was fully prepared to lose ships. It never really was a goal to not lose a ship, but my tactic was really just pre-planning, right? The best way to avoid them is to not even encounter them to begin with. And I did that by going to the in-game statistics, looking at things like how many kills are in this system in the last 24 hours. I would go to like zKillboard and try to find out who's living in this area, when are they most active, and then just intelligence, really, and just knowing where they live, knowing who's there, and what's my best time to avoid them.
Right. So it's a matter of research, but you're plotting a course, and I think you were doing that in a deliberate way, which allows you that time to like say, okay, this is the next area I'm going into, so I will do some research here, see what the locals look like, and figure out when they're not around, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I was in no hurry. I think patience was on my side. My plan was like, and I would get into a dead end system, right? And there would be times I would be camped in, so to say. And my bet was, you're probably wanting to go do something more so than I am, right? I'm willing to wait you out. So, and that
I got
paid
all
off.
the time in the world.
I got all the time. I'm in no rush. I got nowhere to be. You guys want to play this game? Let's play.
Yeah. Well, did you ever have anybody? We'll open it up to the group after this, but did you ever have anybody that was determined to kill you?
There was one time, more than one time, honestly, but there was one time I was trapped in one of those dead end systems. And the really weird thing about it is the experience. As you're going along, you always have these people in local who are either saying, hey, hello, I've heard of you, good luck. And then you have the ones who are like, hey, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to get you. They put bounties on me, and they would say something like, I'm going to know when you die. So you always get those kind of things. And I just played it off and took it in stride. But the creepiest one of all was really the ones who never said anything. And it was when I was in one of those dead end systems, and they had a gate camp on the outgoing gate, about 12 to 16 of them at any given time for the course of 3 days. And the really weirdest thing about it is they never said a word to me. They never said anything in local. They never sent me any mails or nothing. And that psychologically freaked me out the most on my journey, was that particular encounter.
Yeah, it reminds me of a martial art master that said, if they're talking, they're nothing.
Yeah, that, like I say, that was the one that really got to me, because I'm just like, well, I know they know I'm here because they're waiting for me, right?
Yeah.
And they're not saying anything. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that, and then they just disappeared, right? They just, I guess my patience won, and it was like 2 to 3 systems to get out of that pipe, and they were not on the gate that one day, and I said, I'm just going to go for it, and went for it, and I figured they're going to be on the next gate in the next system. They weren't there. Jumped into the next system. They weren't there. I'm like, okay, this is really bizarre. They were really, determined. But yeah, I guess they just, patience won out. They wanted to go do something else.
Awesome. Well, hey, Liz, you're somebody that has to worry about this. Why is that? What is it in your line of work that makes you?
So I primarily run missions, and I fly things like that all the time. And that's a big, fancy, shiny toy that some people would like to kill. Yes, it's a Varger.
Okay.
By
the way, is that the CCP skin on it, or what?
That's the new. I forget what it's called, and I don't want to mispronounce it, but it's the pink skin. So a viewer bought me the pink skin for all my Vargers, which is kind of cool. So got to show off the pink skin.
It's the Zen2 something. It begins with Z.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I believe it came out to celebrate Japanese New Year. I can't remember.
Oh, the Japanese localization or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's based off of a tree or something. I'm not entirely sure. That's not my expertise. Anyways, you fly shiny things to make ISK when you're farming. And when you are trying to make income, people will try to hunt you for said income, or for the modules that you have on your ship, or whatever you're hauling, or if you're doing Abyss, people will try and trace down or scan down your trace and kill you. It's part of the game, and it's something that happens. But yeah, that's why people would be after me, because I'm potentially a loot pinata.
Right. You're carrying back all the winnings. or half of the winnings.
Well, the ship is the winning. Well, the ship itself is worth many times what the value of the loot is, but the ship being valuable allows me to do that fast.
I gotcha.
I guess
So
is the easiest way to put it. I'm trying to keep this simple.
Yeah, well, basically, obviously, the trade-off with missions, right, is the more ISK you invest into them, the faster you can run the mission, so the more ISK you can make overall, because you can complete more missions over time. However, the more money you put into it, the more likely you're going to attract the attention of a group like Code or other ganker groups who might try and destroy your ship to loot the modules from it.
Yeah. But you get to a point where you're spending, say, 500-600 million S to save 10 seconds on a mission or so. And it's worth it because that 5 to 10 seconds per mission for the extra ISK may add into an extra 2 or 3 missions per hour that you can do, meaning that you end up making significantly more over the course of, say, a day.
Yeah. All part of your calculations on where to put money and where not to put money when you're trying to be efficient in this game.
I mean, there's also the assessment of we can't just go pure efficiency. We have to make some concessions because losing things sucks, and it sets you back quite a bit. So or at least myself, I don't just put all the bling on the ship. I put bling where it's needed. But what helps more than having a ship do a mission faster is making sure that it gets back to the station intact. And that's where the evasive maneuvers and being aware, intelligence, and knowing what's going on in your area, being aware of what hunters are currently online, what they're doing, and how they're doing it is what keeps you alive more than, say, fitting the right module on your ship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's what we're talking about, isn't it? The idea that you don't want to be set back. Like, everybody can recover. The game doesn't kill you, right? If you die, at worst case scenario, you pod back to a different clone and you start over. And you lose whatever you had on you at the time. And so that's really what we're talking about here is I don't want to be set back, because in order for me to improve myself in the game, I've got to either wait as skills tick up, or I've got to generate ISK so that I can buy things that I need to make even more money and maybe even accelerate the skill training. And that's the crux of the game, right? That's what you're on this clock, and you don't want people taking time away from you. Sound right?
Yeah. Like, well, when I'm after ISK, yeah, I want to be moving fast, and I want to be keeping my ships and doing more things, and yeah, like it's that simple. But Satonia and I can definitely, and hopefully we will get to talk about the act of hunting and the act of trying to evade the hunters. And it's a rabbit hole. There's answers for everything on both sides, and it is, when you're actually paying attention to it, it's a game that's played on both sides, whether you're aware of it or not. There may be somebody hunting you when you're farming, doing missions, riding a nullsec, like wherever you are, there's potentially a hunter around, and your tools and your ability to react and respond to that is very important.
All right. So Tony,
sorry, my stream deck.
Oh, Rich, that's so Tonya or Rich, you guys play this cat and mouse game. What do you play, both sides of it, or are you guys hunters? How does that work?
I've been on both sides of it, and you mentioned Katia getting around places and pre-planning. I have a little story to tell, and it was when I was about 20 days new into EVE in 2019, and this happened in around August time. After waiting about 20 days, my process to join Dreadit finally got through, and me being new, I was still in the starter system of Semi in Core Azor, where my new players start. Now, what I did, and what I do not recommend anybody else do, is I packed all of my worldly belongings I had on one little coercer, and my friend gave me the direction to test staging. The wrong staging, the war staging. So they told me, go to QLPXJ and then tell me when you're there. And because I was new and I didn't have anything set up, I went and searched QLPXJ, right-click, set desto. And it took me about 50-something jumps to get there. So I spent all of, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, my time, doing jump by jump, until I went to QRPXJ, and I saw keep star. I guess it sounds like a keep. I'll right-click dock in there. So I didn't plan any of that journey, but
there must be an inn. There must be an inn in that keep somewhere that I could sleep.
Yes. So, but in my case, it was just, well, perhaps it was pure luck, but also because of how CCP set things up for new players, they took me through only the high-sec security systems first, then through nullsec. Now, I was lucky enough because my route completely avoided certain highly dangerous systems. We all know about HeadGP and how that gets camped, and we also know about EC TAC PA-TAR, which is so dangerous they even gave a description for it because of its history of bloodshed. And I managed to avoid that, and I just kept on going, and nobody there, maybe because it was a ghost town, but I was lucky enough to avoid this. So that was my bit of story about, I guess, planning a journey to somewhere, well, not planning at all. But when it comes to getting ganked or killed or caught or anything like that, there's a lot of tools that can prevent that nowadays. There's Pirate Circle Helper, which tells you PvP activity. There's all sorts of intel programs where you can hear who's where across entire regions, in fact, that alliances have set up. And I use other websites to keep track of where there's violence and activity, so I can go there to get involved.
What if I told you the best tool is an in-game tool, and every ship has it?
I'm listening.
Dscan?
Yes, Dscan, 100%.
Dscan, yeah.
There are some dangerous systems where the gate warp is about 100 and something AU, and there's nothing that you can warp to there, no celestials, no structures that you can warp there, and that's where things get really dangerous.
Yeah, you can't see there before you get there unless you have combat probes, which is difficult, and that's more of a traveling problem. But yeah, no, I can definitely understand that being scary.
But as
if
for
you don't
hunting,
have a scout.
But as for hunting, Tonya, if you could weigh in on this, hunting it's a bit of a cat and mouse game and a reaction speed and a bit of luck to see how quickly you can jump in, mash Dscan and find the right sites and warp to them before they warp out.
Yeah, so obviously local chat tells you whoever's in system with you in nullsec. You can still use it in high sec and low sec as well, although there tends to be like a lot more noise in high sec and low sec because there's just normal people doing things there. With nullsec, obviously, since alliances control the space, they can control who has docking rights and such. So normally in local, there generally won't be any hostiles in local until you come into local, and then they'll try and dock up as soon as you appear. So yeah, what I would do if let's say I'm trying to hunt a ratter is normally what I do is I jump in system and I use Dscan straight away. If I don't see anything on Dscan, what I'd probably do is warp to a central location like the sun, because all of the anoms always spawn within 4 AU of a planet. But with this, the way the systems work in Eve is like all the closest planets are always really close to the sun, like our solar system, and then there's normally like a few planets further out, but there's less anoms around those, roughly, right? If I don't see anything, I'd move on. If I do see something, what I do is start narrowing down by AU generally. I look at Dscan and I also have my probe scanner active at the same time. Those are two different windows. There are also certain anoms when you're hunting that you would look for too. So, for example, if I'm hunting in nullsec space, I'm generally looking at Forsaken Hubs, Havens, Forsaken Rally Points, and Sanctums. Those are like the 5 anoms that most people run. People generally don't run many of the other ones. So normally what I do is I just narrow down by AU. So if you hold down Control while you're using your mouse wheel on Dscan, it would go up like 1, 2, 3 AU. I'd get them between. So let's say they're not on 3 AU, but they're on 4 AU. Then I know they're between 4 and 5 on my probe scanner, and then I can just narrow it down, and I'd just like warp, you can narrow down Dscan to 5 degrees, and if you hold down your Dscan hotkey and click those anoms, it will descan the anom for you. So
By the way, perfect time to shield this, but I have a guide, and hopefully Matterall will put it in the description or something, or can link it here. But Dscan is a super useful tool, and I have a guide going over the basic use of it. I'm sure Satonia does too. Like, I'm sure you have a Dscan guide.
I think CCP Aurora made one too recently.
In relation to the Huntmaster site.
The directional scanner is in the tutorial section. Is that the one you're talking about, Sutonia? For players?
I don't think there's an official EVE tutorial. Hateless has I think on his YouTube, he has a guide to Dscan. I think CCP Aurora also made one recently. I saw it posted in the EVE partner channel. I'm not sure where that would be. I assume on her YouTube or on the CCP YouTube.
Sorry to distract on this point, but the resources are, Hateless has a great resource. I just linked it inside a chat and we'll put it in the show notes. Watch that. But also, I think inside of the game, the agency now has a tab. It's on the far right. It may be invisible. You may have to scroll over to it. That is tutorials. And they're putting down in tutorials really basic breakdowns of how to use certain tools. And they'll be building on that library. CCP will be over time. I think the first thing they put in there was a directional scanner. So it's in there. Okay, hey, let's tell us about your Dscan tutorial video and what can you expect to learn from it?
Well, it basically explains the why it's offensively powerful and defensively powerful. For hunters, they use it to locate where somebody currently is. And it can give them a very quick rundown of, say, somebody was hunting a miner in nullsec, or like Satonia was explaining, somebody running an anomaly. You can quickly descan several anomalies, or reduce which anomalies it could be, and then only have to descan a few, and quickly locate somebody who's ratting or mission running or doing whatever they're doing. You can quickly locate them if you know what they're doing, and that gives you a great tool. Alternatively, on the other side of the coin, the person that is currently running can see the hunter coming in via their combat probes on Dscan, or via seeing their actual ship show up on Dscan. There's a couple exceptions. A few ships don't show up on Dscan, but they can see these things coming, and if they are properly prepared or ready for it, they can evade the fight altogether and not have to deal with it.
Yeah, so if you're in a like a public celestial, by that I mean like a celestial that anyone can warp to, such as an asteroid belt or a combat anom. As soon as someone comes in local, they can generally find you probably in about 20 to 30 seconds if they know what they're doing. So you have like 20 to 30 seconds to get out. If you're inside like a mission or like a DED site or
those are where things get fun.
Yeah, or escalation, like you don't necessarily have to leave straight away when someone comes in local, as long as you're looking out for like combat scan probes. Another thing as well, right, is while you're clearing missions, it's always a good idea to just clear the rats that have the tackle first, because I know I kill a lot of the AFK Ishtars, because in like the havens there's like 3 tackle rats and then there's like 4 battleships or something, and because the drones automatically go for the battleships first over the frigates, normally they're tackled. So even if they're like they're just kind of AFK, like they're watching Netflix and they just have their Ishtar spinning around their haven, because there's still those tackle rats there. They're normally tackled, and then they have to like spend time clearing the tackle rats out first before I get to them. So usually it's always a good idea to kill those first if you're paying attention.
Yeah, if you're being held by a rat, you're kind of useless. It's painful.
I have to say,
well,
when
you're not useless, but your situation is a bad situation.
Yeah, you're not going to get away if a rat's holding you.
As someone who was the main hunter for a PvP group, I was the initial tackle. I was the person who scouted it, so they relied on me to jump into a system, hit Dscan as soon as possible, and catch things. Catching things is the part where I feel alive. That's where the energy is. That's where I guess, how do they say it? Your hand shakes. My hand's shaking, and I get the chills. But actually killing the person I've caught, that's just a fart, really. That's just gas. It's not that entertaining. But catching things, being the hunter, it's an art form in itself. Killing it is anybody can do that.
Anybody can hit F1, right? But actually grabbing the target and holding onto it while the fleet comes in to back you up is, I would imagine, is fairly exciting. I'm not personally a hunter. I'm the mouse in the story.
But when it comes to hunting and evading, it's all about location and experience. So for me, I've got quite a bit of experience. I know who to look out for. I know who's going to hunt me, and I know who I want to hunt, and I know where I want to hunt. So I've linked in the podcast channel ECE TAC P8R. This is a well-known, extremely violent system. Anybody who comes here should know that being here will probably get you killed. It's directly next to high sec. People can come in and out easily. Lots of people go through here, and lots of people want to stop you here. There's somebody here with over 8,000 kills just in this one system alone, because they realized, hey, you can stay here and you can get all you want: content, money, people to kill. It's one of these systems. But for me, there's all sorts of other systems. Certain stagings I know is a great place to hunt. Certain regions I know it's dangerous to hunt. And I know where it doesn't have any activity and people just can start gating and quietly getting to places without anybody noticing. But then again, there's other places in the game where you can't take 3 jumps without somebody causing you trouble, especially, say, the asset safety locations.
Right. So for you, hunting is
hunting
is
combat,
combat.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Hunting is, it's where I feel truly alive.
Yeah, and that exhilaration that you feel, I think on the other side of it, Hateless, must be exhilaration you feel as well, because you are in a cat and mouse game here, and a mouse is like pumped up too, especially when you escape.
Yeah, so I don't really get excited. I get more frustrated that I kind of have to do something or change what I'm doing, because it kind of eats into the bottom line when I'm trying to farm. But seeing that there's a potential gate or somebody coming for you is where I get excited to find that. Like, it's, hey, there's this hunter outside. Now I have to, or now I can, I don't necessarily have to, but I can decide to take action that would make it more difficult for him to catch me. And then if he continues to persist, I can then decide, hey, you know what, I saw you. You're here, you're hunting me. It's time for me to, like, you know, not be hunted and go dock up and wait out and go on a different account or something. But yeah.
See, I find that very interesting.
What's that?
Well, so I'm stuck in a little area, right? So I don't go long distances. I don't have to travel from like Jita to Omar or whatever. I literally live in a little region and a little pocket of space. There's like 5 systems, and the hunter will generally. So I take a mission out of a hub. So I take the mission, I go and do an anomaly system or 2 over. And there's common spots where people will likely try and kill me. And one of the big ones is a gate. And honestly speaking, Marauders don't have a lot to do on a gate except try to fire back, and maybe the gank will fail. They have a couple tools in their arsenal, but nothing that's going to stop 20 people from just dunking it and it being dead. So the answer is to see that, hey, you're on the menu. You should probably, you know, take a different path or go around. And luckily I have alternate paths that I can take around. But like somebody might be scanning ships on the station. Okay, so somebody's scanning ships. Do I need to worry yet? No. And then I go around, and if I'm just oblivious and not watching local, eventually I'm going to get caught. But if I sit there and I hit Dscan as I come through the gate, I can see, oh, there's 20 catalysts sitting on in a stray house just off this gate. Just off overview. Okay, now I know that they're on the gate that I'm going to come through. I can come through a different gate, or I can log in and alt and scout my way back. But it's a cat and mouse. So I mean, I don't know how much Satonia can talk about hunting things in high sec. I don't know if you do that a lot. But for them to catch you, they have to be able to land on you, and their execution is second base. Like they have to be right on point. They have to catch you, and then they have a limited time to actually commit the kill and do it. And so you're on the other side of that, where you're trying to avoid the encounter altogether in the first place. But if you do get the encounter, you try and do everything you can to stall or buy yourself an extra second or two that can sometimes keep you alive.
You're talking about ganking and high sec. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's primarily what I deal with.
Actually, I don't think it's completely necessary to land on someone. During my time, I've flown with lots of people, and one of the people I've enjoyed flying with were the Chinese small gangers, the F1 Monkey, and there's a hunter called Zgang Z. I'll link him. With DED, with hunting DED runners, they're very, very skittish, and it's difficult to get on top of them. But often you don't need to get on top of them. My group has done things like bubbling certain citadels, and it's a gamble because with the amount of citadels in null space right now, there's an old video by I think Flight Leader where he chased down a rattlesnake, and he chased him across many systems until he sinoed in a Ragnarok when the guy tried to land on the outpost at the time and one-shot him. Obviously, we don't have outposts now, and there's stations in every system, so it's a lot more difficult. But if you bubble the right station and you know what you're doing, you can catch people when they try to escape you. It is.
You can set and bait the trap, right? So you see that they're there, and you know where they're going. You could set the trap.
Now, I have chased things, and I have been chased. What about you, Sidonia? Have you chased down a prey that's trying to run away gate to gate, and have you been chased and had to find a way to evacuate?
I mean, I get chased all the time because I'm a solo PvPer, right? So I'm always avoiding the blob and then trying to turn around and kill like some guy who's out of position. But yeah, I don't have much experience when it comes to killing people in DD sites. I know I have a few tricks for avoiding people. So, for example, one area that I like to use is the drifter wormholes. There's normally one every 10 jumps or so, if you take note of it. You can also use Ferra. You can also use filaments to avoid people too, right? Especially if you're someone who wants to do exploration or DD sites. Instead of going out into nullsec like the regular way through gates, if you just use a noise filament, you'll probably end up in a quiet area of low sec most likely. And if not, you can always just if you take a cloak and a mobile depot with you or something, you can always just cloak up, wait 15 minutes, and then go somewhere else. And then when you want to get back to high sec again, you can just use the parchment filaments if you have standings to the Triglavians, or you can also just filament around and get somewhere kind of close to Ferra or Empire space that looks kind of clear.
Wow.
What a time to be alive to have this.
Yeah, that's some next level stuff. So you're looking for, if you're being chased, you look for wormholes to dip out in. They'll take you somewhere else they can't follow because they're a bigger fleet, for instance.
I've had my wormhole rolled out by lots of different groups, and they've camped us in, and they've had heavy interdiction cruisers on every gate. It was a nightmare, but I handled a lot of evacs and evasive for when I was flying with Flaming Dragons. It was. That's why I always have a probe launcher. I was a wormholer. I obviously have probe launchers on my scepter, but it's also,
by the way,
so I could evacuate. Some of them were even so persistent they scanned out the wormhole before I even scanned it out. So I had to outmaneuver them then. But well, one of us stayed in Ethereum Reach, and the other one of us went through a wormhole and went and killed some things in Providence while they were trying to camp us down.
Well,
there's also different, there's some areas that you can go to as well to avoid people. So, for example, if you're in a cruiser or bigger, you could go inside the ESS in the system if you're in a null soft system, and that way the frigates and destroyers can't get in, and that might be maybe you can split up the group a little bit. There's also a pretty decent area to maybe safe log in, is if you go inside there and then burn away, because they can't use combat probes and they can't bring small fast stuff. You can generally just burn away and get out and just safe log or filament or something, or warp to the outside and then burn off as well, because it's a pretty safe area where they can't really combat probe you. You can also use the frigate wormholes as well. I've used these to kill people all the time in groups. Is have a frigate wormhole probed out, I'll warp to the frigate wormhole, they'll warp a gang to me with Saber plus a bunch of cruisers. I jump through, the Saber jumps through, they can't get through, and then the Saber dies to me on the other side, which is pretty funny.
I have to say, the ESS has been a godsend because I'll tell everybody a secret. If you walk to an ESS and you line off and prop on, and I guess as long as they don't have anything fast to chase you, 1 minute later and you've burned 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers away from the ESS, there is nothing on God's green earth that somebody can do to catch you at that point unless they bring something ridiculous like triple boosters. Not even Von Holt, actually no, maybe he could catch you, but not even Von Holt can catch you, a imp lined off on an ESS that's been burning for the last 5 minutes.
Well, I think it's next level that Suetonia is a hunter, right? And that's his aspect. But in order to hunt effectively, you have to pare down your prey. Sometimes they're in a big herd. And so he'll use evasive maneuvers to draw them in and bottleneck them or create a situation where they have to filter through only a couple ships at a time in order to be a hunter again. So it kind of, you were a hunter, now you're using evasive maneuvers to draw in your prey, and then you hunt again after they get all separated and stuff. That's next level stuff right there, Suetonia.
Yeah, there also there's some. I guess we haven't really talked too much about combat probe ships, but if you're a hunter and you want to like kill explorers and stuff, generally, like I'd say, like T3Ds are probably the best because they can kind of solo PvP. They're not really specialized or expensive, and
Tech
they can get
destroyers.
Yeah, tech-free destroyers, because they have a roll bonus which allows them to fit a combat probe launcher for relatively cheap, like 10 CPU or something. And they all have a utility high slot. And the Confessionals people actually have two, so you can very easily put a combat probe launcher on one of them, and then that way you can hunt down and kill explorers. You're probably not strong enough to kill some radders, but...
Is that a sigh from Katia?
You're killing me here.
Combat probes are expensive, or combat probe launchers are expensive CPU wise. Like they cost a lot without an unbonus ship. I think they're 210 CPU or something like that. They're insane.
It costs a precious high slot, which if you're trying to min-max your ship.
Well, let me jump in here real quick because the techniques.
Are you feeling anxiety, by the way?
Who, me? Yeah. But just to jump in, the techniques that the hunters are describing are the exact same techniques that, being an exploration corp, that's what we do, right? We use filaments to get out to nullsec to explore, but we also use filaments to get out if we're trapped. We're prepared to scan down wormhole connections to get out. And of course, we've got Thera, which is kind of our wormhole highway, if you will, that's got connections everywhere. So all these techniques you're describing can be used on the other side of the coin to get away from these people too.
What do you use for exploration in Astera?
I typically use just about anything, honestly. Astera tends to be my favorite ship, but I don't play the game as a normal explorer does. In other words, I don't do the sites, the SITES. I do the sites, SIGHTS, right? So, but I typically fly in Astero.
The Astero has been notoriously difficult to catch in general. It cloaks, it's got good speed, it's got great alignment. I've linked in the podcast channel one of the kills I got, which was incredibly frustrating. And I had to use, this is what I have to employ against Astero pilots, bumping. I presume you've had somebody try to decloak you or bump you to stop you warping?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about some techniques that are used back and forth. A few things we want to cover. We'll talk about probes. I do want to go back to ganking, which is something that Hateless has to deal with. And then I want to end maybe talking about the Marauder and how its update has kind of helped. But about probes, Suetonia, you brought it up. Do people still use probes to hunt down ships as often as they used to? Any of you guys?
Absolutely.
That's like still fundamental to.
Yeah, you need combat probes to kill anyone who isn't at a public site. So if they're in a safe spot, if they're inside a mission, if they're inside a DD site, you need combat probes in order to be able to reach them.
So if we could kind of, just for conceptual reasons, a player that's learning about the game is thinking in terms of what they can see. And when they're on a grid, they have an overview that tells them these are the ships that are with you in this 200K radius, let's say.
So let's build an analogy here.
Okay.
You're driving a car going down the highway. Okay, so your overview is your front windshield, what you can see directly in front of you. We'll build on that as we go through this conversation. I see where you're going. I just want to build an analogy that most people can relate to.
Okay, but I don't know where to go with that. Like, so then explain the directional scanner to the car at that point.
So a directional scanner would be like, you now have your mirrors, your rear view mirror, and you can look around your car. You're aware of your surroundings, not just what's blatantly right in front of you. So you can kind of be aware the random car that's not paying attention behind you. You know he's not paying attention because you hit Dscan, aka looked in your mirror. You're slightly more aware of what's around you, but you don't have the whole picture yet. You don't know what's on the highway. Local intel would be turning on the radio and hearing that there's a crash up ahead, so you might want to get off the freeway and go around the traffic.
Right. So there's different, like, you see what's around you, then you see what's in the same system with you, but not around you. And you use a directional scanner to kind of probe that down, like, let's say, headlights at night. And then you also have long-term vision where you see systems ahead of you if there's a pileup up ahead and whatever. And that is the map. It shows you like what's been killed in the last 24 hours or something.
Yeah, you start getting into third-party tools where you can like see potential problems up ahead or having a scout.
But also the in-game map tells you that too, doesn't it? How many pods have been destroyed and
kinda.
Yeah, it's delayed though by 15 minutes, and it's not as good as some of the third-party tools that you can use.
That doesn't make any sense. It should be the other way around, shouldn't it?
Well, you can see like how many pods have died, how many ships have died, but you can't see what those ships were, what those pods were, what the attackers used. But you can see that information if you use like a gate check tool or if you go to zkillboard.com. Because sometimes there could be a pod killed in a system, but it might be just some guy killed his friend to
self-destructed or whatever, or not self-destructed, but sent his friend home by mercifully killing his friend. Yeah. So so basically you have your overview. That's what's immediately around you. But you need to know, in order to be a good player, what's beyond your immediate vision. And probes help with that, as well as the D-scanner. And that's what Suetonia was talking about with the probes. You need to be able to use those well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need them to get to people.
Yeah, so somebody's in a mission or an anomaly or in a safe spot, like he said, the only way to get them, you can't just point your ship at them and fly towards them. Even if you locate them on Dscan, you're like, okay, he's exactly here, and you triangulate exactly where it is. You can't get to him if he's in a safe because it'll take you like a year to fly to him. Because of just how far it is, even if you're in like the fastest frigate in the game. Space is big.
Yeah.
But what probes give you is kind of a way to, once you know kind of where they're at, you can launch the probes and then pinpoint where they are, and then that gives you a warp 2 point where you can actually warp to and land on them.
Got it. So you're using probes to triangulate their position, which gives you a beacon that you can actually warp to, and that's how you catch somebody.
Yeah, kind of. That's a rough translation.
You can also use probes defensively as well, in a way. Like if you want to if you want to check an area that's outside your D-scan range, if you have combat probes, for example, let's say there's a gate that's like 60 AU away and you want to check what's on the gate because maybe you want to go through that gate. There's people in local. There's nothing that you can really warp to like land in D-scan range to check that gate. You could send the combat probes over there to check what's on the gate.
Yeah, you sure can. Yeah, so combat probes have, basically you can put them anywhere in a system. You don't have to be within range. Dscan has a limited range. It's very informative, but you can only see what's within 14 AUs of you. Whereas combat probes, I think their biggest range is it's 64 or 32 AU that they can expand to in their little bubble. But they can see that bubble of that much at a time anywhere in the system, or they can pinpoint something very specifically. And they're a little bit more flexible, but they require you to actually fit them in the ship, whereas the D-scan is on every ship.
Yeah, now on the other side of this, being the hunted, right, is D-scan is an explorer's life. You see combat probes on your D-scan, it's time to safe up.
Yeah, cloak up.
Yeah, cloak up, safe, but whatever. You know,
I used to
be alert and get out of there. Get out of your
I
sight
used-
and stop data hunting.
I used to, or when I was starting to do level 5 missions, which are in low sec, they're in dangerous space. I would park an alt outside of the local, biker gangs hangout, and wait to see if they would launch probes. And I knew that was my signal to get out because they were aware and now starting to look for me.
So say you're sitting in a level 5 mission, right? And you're in your carrier. By the way, I lost the carrier last week. Please don't use that against me because I made a bad mistake. That was dumb. But say you're sitting in whatever ship you're doing a level 5 in. You're going to be there for a while. Somebody shows up in local. Is that the time to pick up and leave that mission and have to like set yourself back up in the mission, or do you want to stay in there and see what happens? Because that person might just be passing through the system. He might be hunting. Dscan, or say you have combat probes in Dscan. Say that system's bigger than 14 AUs and the gate's out of Dscan range, and there's only one gate that he could have come into. We're trying to kind of paint a simple picture that people can follow. So say somebody shows up in local, you can launch the combat probes and scan the gate. And when somebody pops up in local, you can already have them launched sitting on the gate, and then when somebody hits local, you sit there and hit B a couple times, and maybe you'll catch them on the probe scanner. Actually, you probably would. You just start scanning it over and over again, and eventually it could catch it. That would give you a heads up of what they are. So if you're sitting around in your level 5 mission, you're in a dead space pocket, they're not going to be able to get you until they launch their combat probes and scan you down. They can descan you all they want. They can say, hey, there's a carrier here. They can call the bat phone. They can do whatever they want, but they're not going to get on your head until they've launched combat probes and are on you, and have started scanning you down. They can't get to you until then. So if you're watching your local, you would see them show up in local, and then you can use the combat probes to identify what they are, if they're a threat or not, which, let's be honest, just about anything can be a threat. And then watching Dscan, which is your immediate vicinity, which would be your last warning that something is coming for you. You would see combat probes that are not yours, aka the ones that aren't on the gate but that are on you. You would see those combat probes on Dscan, and when you start seeing that kind of thing, it's time to leave. Like you can see these things coming a mile away and then react accordingly without having to uproot your entire plan or operation, and you can kind of see and react accordingly. So I guess my initial reaction for level 5 is to immediately line back to my insta-dock. But that would be the first step you take. Somebody popped up in the local, make sure you're aligned. Okay, you see what they are. Okay, they're a threat. Double check your line. Maybe pull in drones. Do what you got to do to be able to bounce immediately. Combat probes show up. It's time to go. Like, you kind of overstaying your welcome. You don't want them to scan down your mission, because then they'd sit in your mission and wait for you to come back. But you want to leave before they finish scanning you. And then
go on, finish.
Go ahead.
Okay. We talk about all these defensive measures, but I want to talk about the offensive measures, the sword to anybody.
Hold on a second. We're going to take a quick break because we got to let Katia go. He's on a time limit, and we'll be back to talk more about hunting, but also we're going to get into marauders and even ganking, talk about ganking and what the new formulas are now that industry has changed the composition of ships and the price of ships. We'll talk about all that in just a second, right after this break. And we want to say, by the way, welcome, Katia, to Talking in Stations as part of the crew. We're delighted to have you. You're a legendary explorer, a legendary player. You are now the head of Signal Cartel as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just about a month ago, actually, stepped up into the CEO role of Signal Cartel.
Right. Signal Cartel is a service corporation that, or alliance that just gives us constant weather information, and they go out and do the Thera entries for the public. And they were also what I call Eve's St. Bernards. If you're ever stuck in Poshfin or a wormhole, you call for help and they will find you and drag you out of a wormhole, which is pretty amazing.
Signal Cartel is amazing. I absolutely love that you guys exist in the game.
We really appreciate it very much. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks, Katia. We'll see you around, and thanks for being on the show. We'll be back after this. All right, thanks. Welcome back, everyone. Talking in stations today is the weekend report. So we're talking about evasive maneuvers, and we've covered Dscans and probes and some of the behaviors of the locals and just how to do your due diligence to survive in the game. But what happens when you get caught? What happens when somebody does land on your grid and you get into ship-to-ship combat? Are there evasive maneuvers to be used then? Or are you just a dead duck? Well, let's find out. Rich, let's talk about this topic a little bit. What are some of the techniques back and forth that you can think of?
Well, the most terrifying technique, because I'm the main hunter, the interceptor pilot, the most terrifying one I have to deal with is somebody turning on me because I fly an interceptor. It is a very squishy and easy to kill ship if under the right circumstances. I think the most terrifying ones are somebody using an energy neutralizer, neutralizing all of my energy and stopping me from being able to continue to hold them down. And then they're free to warp. So for that, I nearly always fit a Nosferatu, a energy vampire. So I can constantly suck energy out and keep my energy levels at a healthy amount. The other thing is sometimes some people, they are the definition of, how do I say, a wolf in sheep's clothing, where they may fit something like a scrambler onto their just otherwise innocuous ratting ship. And these things absolutely terrify me because I didn't expect this. Now they've got me scrambled. I'm slow as hell. I'm gonna die. So it's moments like that. But you don't always have to run away or play on the defensive when it comes to getting away or evading somebody. there's lots of offensive measures that you can use. A friend of mine in Wrecking Crew, all of his Dominexes that he rats with, they're fitted with swords. You know, if I tackle him, he'll pull out a sword. He'll nuke me out. He'll scram me. He'll put light drones out and kill me, and I have to be wary of this. But the problem is, a lot of the people who do PvE, a lot of people who do ratting, their ships are not fit for combat. They are fit to kill rats. They're fit for speed, to clear the sites as soon as possible, and they consider death or getting caught as something that is purely defensive, that if you're caught, there's not much you can do because your ship is designed for one purpose. But this isn't true. You can definitely fit a ship to fight back, and you can definitely fit a ship to survive longer and cause trouble, and in some cases even force people off.
Never go down not swinging. If you're caught, you want to bare all your teeth, show it all. You're in
a Marauder, which has recently gotten a lot of buffs.
Yes, they have an entire arsenal that they were just given, which is awesome. And so replace that carrier with a Marauder. Say it's running level 5, and somebody does catch it. I have 3 utility high slots that I could fit. I could put a smart bomb. I could put heavy newts. There's 3 utility highs there that have whatever, and they've always been there because they have the siege module. So they have the 4 guns that are double powered. So they effectively have 8 guns, and then they have 8 high slots, and 3 of them are utility because 1 is dedicated to Bastion. That means that they can fit smart bomb, a cloak, a combat probe. Like, they're very flexible. So if you're coming down on a Marauder, you don't know exactly what you're getting into. At least this is in low sec and null sec. And then the Bastion module got a huge buff, and it's the double rate of fire on the guns. They fire so fast that it makes sense to ungroup them when you're ratting. Like, that is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard, but I don't group my guns anymore for Marauders. It's faster to just one shot, and it's a lot easier on you. Which I'll get back to. But in low sec, so you come down on the Marauder, suddenly you're neuted. It can also have a grapple and a web. It can also have there's a new module called a signal suppression module, and it reduces its signature radius significantly. They also have micro jump drives. They're commonly fitted onto Marauders, and that instantly makes them go 100 kilometers away if you don't have a scram on them. And like, that double rate of fire also gives them double DPS. So they have claws. They are scary things to try and kill. They can and should fight back. They shouldn't just roll over and die. You would think.
I have mixed feelings about the Marauder Bastion changes. I think.
Hold on, we're talking about Marauder already. We got ahead of ourselves.
Oh, okay. We'll get to that in a moment.
So, Tony, weigh in on the combat. When you get caught, is there anything you can do, or are you just done for?
So the best thing you can probably do is to make sure that you're lined out, because for whatever reason, the person who's tackling you, they may drop a point on you at some point. If you have spare utility drones, you might want to use EC 300s if you have spare space.
Do those work well?
They can work. I mean, obviously they're chance based, but there's a pretty good chance of jamming an interceptor, like something like a stiletto or malediction. If they don't have a signal amplifier fitted, it's about a 30% chance. So, and you're going to live for at least hopefully long enough to get a few rolls on that before his friends come down and secure tackle on you. You can also carry like a mobile depot with you as well and put that up. Normally, most interceptors, they don't actually have great weapons, so they can't kill the mobile depot before it goes online. And you could also preemptively put one up if you're in a Marauder and you're kind of static. You're not really moving around.
I would never drop a mobile depot next to a Marauder unless it was already in combat. That's the dumbest thing you can do.
Wait, why?
Sorry. I'll explain later. Let's let him finish that.
But what's the purpose of dropping a mobile depot in the first place?
It allows you to refit off of it as long as you don't have a combat timer. In a Marauder specifically, you get a PvP timer when you're a weapons timer when you're in Bastion, so you can't use it. But until you come out and wait 60 seconds. But if you're just in a normal PvE ship, if you drop a depot next to you, or after the depot goes online after 60 seconds, you can just you can refit your ship, which means you could refit it to try and avoid combat. So if you had warp core stabilizers, you could refit those and then warp out. You could also refit like energy neutralizers into the highs, or you could refit like a micro jump drive if you don't have one fitted already. If you're in a battleship or a battle cruiser, there's tons of different modules you could refit using a mobile depot to try and escape.
So it's this long lost refitting technique that.
You drop a mobile depot and you can refit in space. It's kind of helpful.
Yeah. I thought, because some people, what they'll do is drop a mobile depot and then they'll dump all their stuff into it, like their loot. So if they get blown up, they can come back and get it, since that a mobile depot will protect their stuff until they come back. But you're saying you can change your modules for evasive maneuvers using a mobile depot.
Yeah. So what one key thing here that I think that we might be missing here is that the one that is getting caught has to think about what he's going to do when he gets caught, and might have to plan a little bit and have something prepared for the instance when he gets caught. He can't just be caught with his pants down. So lesson learned is to prepare a little bit and be ready to get caught. You should avoid being caught if you are ratting or doing PvE, or if you're the mouse, you should try and avoid being caught, but you should also prepare for being caught. Right? Should do both.
Yeah, and many ships, I think, not all, but a lot of battleships, the bigger ships, they tend to have spare drones. So normally you'd maybe have a set that you're using to run the rats. Like I think I can't remember specifically, but I think the Paladin has like, you can use like 3 sets of 5 like.
I think the
light drones,
Paladin has 25 MB bandwidth. It doesn't have a lot.
Yeah, but it has a big drone base. So you could carry, like, let's say you're doing a Garusta mission, you have Hornet 2s in there, but then in the spare slots you could have EC 300s in case you get tackled.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So on the people in chat are starting to ask, but why wouldn't you want to put a mobile depot or mobile tractor next to a Marauder or your drones? And I know that you're trying to not quite talk about Marauder buffs yet, or are we going into Marauder buffs? Sorry, Matterall, you're muted.
Yeah, looks like we lost you, man.
Well, I mean, I guess you can just go into the Marauder stuff. Like, I think we were going to talk it's going to talk maybe about the identity cloak trick, but otherwise, let's just go into Marauders, because.
Okay.
So go ahead.
The siege module has always had a statistic on it, or not the siege module, the Bastion module. It's a siege module. It's a battleship siege. Anyways, has a bonus that prevents it from being jammed, which is the 1,000 or 10,000% sensor strength bonus. It's always been there. Or it's been there for a long time. I think when they initially introduced the Bastion module, it was in there. The Marauders got what looks like a very minor buff to their sensor strength. They got +9 sensor strength, so it went from 15 to 18, depending on your skill, to 25 to 29, depending again on the ships and skills. That means that when it's sieged, its sensor strength is now 290 instead of 200, and that makes it difficult to scan down, because the difficulty of scanning something down with combat probes is directly correlated, or the difficulty is calculated by your sensor strength compared to your signature radius. So if your sensor strength is half or greater than your signature radius, you become far more difficult to scan down. And then if you go a step further, you can put a sensor booster on your Marauder, and while you're siege and the sensor booster running, your signature, your sensor strength can be greater than your signature radius. Anything greater than a 1-to-1 ratio for those two is more than you need, because it doesn't do anything. But at 1-to-1, you are the hardest possible thing to scan down. It takes perfect skills and implants to scan you down at that point, with your average hunter.
But if you put that depot down, they can scan that depot, get straight on top of you. forget all the bonuses you have. You may be covered in camouflage, but you got a
big
mag
old
light shining right there.
I got it. So, but that's important to distinguish because when Suetonia was talking, he's talking about the general case of these gives you options. If you put down a Home Depot, gives you Mobile Depot gives you options. What you're saying is Marauder is specially made to survive by some obscurity as well, and you don't want to jeopardize that in any way.
Yeah, so deploying your drones when you're in a Marauder, when you launch your drones, the drones can easily be scanned down. The Mobile Depot and the Mobile Tractor unit can be scanned down as well. Ron mentioned in chat about Rex near you. NPC Rex cannot be combat scanned, only player Rex. So that's also a thing. So if you are in your site in a Marauder properly fit, you are very difficult to get your finger there. It's difficult for the hunters to get their finger on you. And that is a huge thing. And of course they have the double DPS and all the tools that they have at their disposal on top of that. And that's a big deal. And that's partly why they're being targeted so heavily, because people are doing dumb things like putting Mobile Tractor units next to them in high sec and using these tools that they think are helping them, and they really are just making it easier to be caught.
Well, as the saying goes, what was it on Big Bang Theory? God forbid anybody watches that. NASA has a $10,000 camera. It's secured by a $10 lock, and if you may have this big expensive ship, but you make yourself unsecure by that little cheap thing that you don't technically need. And compromising your security.
What do you think, Suetonia? Is that OP or?
Well, the fact that you can't probe down a Marauder.
You can. It's just really difficult.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. No, I don't think it's that bad, to be honest with you. I mean, like it was already hard to probe. It's just when CCP improved their sensor strength that it put it into that territory. Like people already used to run. I know some people used to run like level 4 missions in Tengus back in the day. I don't know if it's.
Remember the slippery Pete's?
Yeah, kind of like the slippery Pete idea. When the Tengu had that subsystem that increased its sensor strength a ton, you could run level 4 missions in a Tengu that required virtue implants or like a bunch of like scanning upgrade modules in order to be found. So it was generally pretty safe.
I think slippery Pete's were actually impossible to scan down.
But they changed.
No, they've always been possible.
Oh.
You need virtue implants to probe them, though, which, in a combat situation, it's pretty hard to. You need like a guy in Fleet Command who has virtue implants.
There was a point at which you could not.
This is McLeod.
Hello. There was a point at which you couldn't descan. Not descan, probe people. That had a significant. Sensor strength to sig radius. They changed that.
It got changed.
They changed that so you can, but there's a point at which you definitely need implants to do.
Yeah, if your sensor strength is 1.08 times your signature radius, that's the difficulty cap, and that's the most. So if you have 100 sig, if you had 108 sensor strength, any more sensor strength doesn't make you more difficult to probe. But I think anywhere over like 90-ish, like 90 to 100 ratio is when they need to get implants to probe you.
All right, a little more on Marauders here. We're going to bring in a wormhole subject matter expert. This is Tiberius, part of TIS as well. You've been seeing a lot of Marauders in wormhole space?
Yeah, these are becoming a bit of an endemic problem to wormhole space in general. I think it's actually quite creative with what's going on, because these are a response to what's happening with the industry changes coming up, right? So normally the way that people have been running sites before, which is the classic method adopted by a player that no longer plays in Hard Knocks. He made a very popular video essentially outlining how to run C5 sites with Dreads. That was run with Naglfars, and then that video was passed around for a long period of time. Dreads were very cheap back in those days, from 1.5 to 2 billion ISK, fully fitted. Now we're talking that, we're looking at dreads. They're going to cost anywhere from 8 to 10 bill once these prices fully, level out. As of now, as it stands, the raw material cost to create a nag is going to be about 10 bill. So what that translates into, so it's the rolling changes that happened recently with wormhole space, essentially now allow for people to one-shot wormholes with that's what I'm looking for here, with carriers. And that's become a popular way of hunting again. So if you get caught by one of these hunters, you're sacrificing, depending upon how your dread is fit, anywhere from 30 to 40 bill, which is an astronomical, tremendous amount of money for these people, right? Because if you get caught, you're essentially caught on field with these dreads, because Siege is essentially a self-tackling agent. Now what people are doing instead is they're running 7 to 10 Marauders plus maybe a couple of command ships or any combination in between. I've seen a couple of Nesters. I've seen people running remote rep absolutions, which was the weirdest thing that I've seen in a while, in order to maximize efficiency. And these guys are clearing sites in the same amount of time that dreads were running them, except if you get rolled into, the site only tackles one ship. So everybody else can just micro jump out, and now you've only lost 4 bill as opposed to however many Marauders it is that you have on field. And these ships, one of the balance mechanisms that CCP put into the sites way back when was the Drifter Boss, which holds half of the site's ISK behind, it's gated behind him. You have to kill him in order to get, half the site's ISK. And he newts a tremendous amount of newt pressure. Now, some of you may or may not know, but the CCP also increased the amount of, I believe, the cap regen on the Paladin. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do know that they changed the cap around in order to make it more stable.
Yeah, they did, and for the Chronos too. The ones that use cap to fire that got cap buffs.
The balance for the capacitor on the Marauders, it's weird how they did it. I can go into detail on it, but it's really weird how they did it.
Right. So, but anyway, they essentially made the ship much more cap stable. So now you can actually fit these ships to tank the Drifter Boss newt pressure that comes in, which is typically only a capital ship could tank at the time. So, anyway, this is... go ahead.
A Paladin with max skills cannot run its guns, period.
Yeah, but it can if it gets fitted.
But yeah, so it's got a strong cap. So its base cap regen is like 30 gigajoules a second. So you can make it incredibly tanky using that cap, but you have to choose guns or tank, or to be using your weapons or tank. So I guess yes, it could tank it, but that one Marauder, or the one that's taking damage, would not be able to fire back.
Yes, it would. Yes, it can. I've seen the fits, and I've actually run it myself. Because what you end up having to do is you have, so I'll explain the fit. You have 2 cap rechargers, 2 cap batteries, 2 or 3 cap power relays, and 1 or 2 Nosferatus. And depending upon how your fit is set up, and you can take, and they can tank about 1600 DPS depending upon what your large armor repper is on top of it. Okay. And that's the amount of DPS that the Drifter Boss does. And the Nosferatus give you enough cap back in order to, because you can actually NOS the Drifter Boss. It's the only Drifter ship in the entire game that you can NOS in wormhole space anyway.
It's where you steal capacity from the other person.
Right.
All the while running your guns?
Yep. While running your guns, while running your reppers, and you're just fine. In fact, actually, I'm looking at it now. You're 70% cap stable, which is pretty bonkers.
I'm surprised, Tiberius, when people normally hear that Loot Piñas is worth 3, 4, 5 billion plus, in multiple groups of them are plaguing their space. They don't see that as a plague. They see that as a as a challenge. They see that as prey.
I disagree, Rich, because this is the same problem that we were running into when Leshaks were introduced, and we had Leshak when we had Leshak balls essentially running inside of C5 space, and they were just fitting micro jump drives, and they would sacrifice a ship in order to, if they were about to get caught, they would sacrifice a ship because they all get tackled. And the amount of ISK that they had to put on field was about equivalent to a dread, but it was much more, risk averse. That was risk efficient, I think is the correct way of putting it.
I'm also not going to mention that Marauders do as much DPS as a HA Dread.
Yeah, as a HA Dread now. Yeah, yeah, you can fit, which is kind of ridiculous, right? You can fit a Paladin to do 2,500 DPS, which is just absolutely bonkers, and it tracks better than a HA Dread too if you've got good skills, a pod, and maybe a drug or two. So these. I'm probably going to end up talking about this and making a show maybe next Saturday about this because there's pretty huge implications about this right now.
By the way, HA Dread is high angle weaponry. Is that's still a thing? Titans have no HA capability anymore. Right?
No, they don't. Yeah, the only people who can fit HA weapons are Dreads.
But Tiberius, none of the two Paladins you linked in the podcast channel have micro jump drives. Or large micro jump drives.
You can still drop the micro jump field generator, right? The little that's what a lot of people are doing now as well. You can still drop the micro jump field generators. These guys that were linked are, I'm guessing, probably not very smart and haven't really figured out how this fit works. But there are plenty of people that have figured it out. The two most popular ships right now are the Vargur and the Paladin, just because the Naglfar skills directly translate to the Vargur, and a lot of people do have dread alts that can, for the Revelation that can directly translate to the Paladin. So,
well, I've got a confession to make, and that is I do know one of the people who have been running these sites using the Paladins, and in large numbers. For what it's worth, due to the Marauder changes, it has definitely made them more popular, especially with the 30 seconds reduction. I personally disagree with the 30 seconds. I think it should be 45. So it's shorter than 60, but longer than 60 at the same time. That's what I personally believe. But it requires substantial investment and startup to do so. The person who did it took a well over, I think, 50 billion plus loan to be able to invest in his characters to build these up. And he's fielding a lot of ISK. If one bubbler arrives and bubbles them and begins scramming the Marauders, he could lose many hours of work. And these things, compared to the Leshaks, these things are a bigger loop pinatas, and as well as that, they usually require implants. So it seems
so high risk, money. High startup cost equals great rewards.
Yeah, the reward. I mean, we're talking like if you're running these sites, like for some people are running these sites for 8 to 12 hours a day. We're talking like 80 to 100 bill a day, which is a pretty substantial amount of ISK for a lot of people. 100 bill can last somebody, depending upon how many accounts you have, can last somebody 3 to 4 months.
But isn't this wormhole routing? The sites, our sites spawn differently compared to nullsec. We are not guaranteed sites.
That's true. Yes. But there is a site pool all across wormhole space, in which there are different mechanics in which sites spawns in different wormholes. So let's say, for instance, that you have a 5-5 in your what is colloquially known as roaching, which is running C5 sites with battleships. If you clear out a C5 and then just roll that C5 connection that you have, you just get a fresh C5, right? And most of the time, it's pretty well accepted that that sites spawn within an hour to 3 hours after they're dead, not in the same system, but within, whatever pool it is that CCP has established with wormhole space. So,
all right. Well,
Do you
this is
think
a bigger
this is a-
topic. We'll learn more about this
I'm right
topic
and wrong, man.
on Tiberius.
Do you think this is a problem for wormhole space?
You just put Hateless out of work. We'll learn more about this on your show, the Wormhole Show for Talking in Stations, a Noicus connection, Tiberius. And you're planning one to come out in the next 2 weeks or so?
yeah, I would imagine I tried to do it this Saturday, but personal stuff got in the way. I'm going to try to get it done either this coming Saturday or the following Saturday. Saturdays are normally when I do my shows. So expect to see that here in the next week or two. Just for final clarification purposes here, because I do see Ron kind of, ribbing me a little bit here. I'm not trying to say that, Marauders are unbalanced in their current state. I definitely think that they needed an adjustment. What I'm trying to argue is that I think that wormhole space sites need a bit of an adjustment in order to compensate for them, because this has been an endemic issue since the Lashaks came out. Because these sites that have been that are in wormhole space are designed for capital ship ratting, not for just battleship ratting.
Do you think this is a bane or a boon?
I would say overall it's probably a bane.
Ooh. Well, I don't think the sites were designed precisely for anything in mind, because I've done C6 sites before the Marauder buffs in just standard T1 battleships. I think it's designed for, well, whoever can brainstorm a good enough composition to do it. I've even run C5s in battle cruisers and destroyers.
Anyway, that's all I really have to say about it. Just wanted to kind of throw that in there because I do know that it is an issue, a rising issue that people are paying attention to, and it's important to kind of clarify that point a little bit.
Yeah. All right. We have one. Thank you, Tiberius. Appreciate it. We have one last section on evasive maneuvers that we wanted to do, and that is the new formulations. I don't think anybody in here is an expert on ganking. Maybe Hateless is an expert on leaving ganking, but the industrial changes have made the price points for ships that gankers use cheaper and made jump freighters more expensive, although we hear this is not the end for jump freighters and freighters. Those will adjust. Industrials too, probably. I don't know.
So I just want to mention that on ganking, the cost of ships is already so low, they don't care that they lose their gank unless it's like 10 Taloses. And the Taloses, I believe, are going up in cost. Taloses and Tornadoes are going up, whereas like Catalysts and bombers going down? I can't remember. But the cheaper ships are going down in cost, and the more expensive ships used to gank are actually going up.
Battle cruisers are going down in cost. Anything smaller than a battleship is going to go down in cost. So we don't know about the Tech 2 yet. CCP hasn't posted the Tech 2, so bombers might actually go up in costs. But the Taloses will be cheaper.
I thought the Taloses and Tornadoes went up in cost.
No, they actually had a mineral reduction on the spreadsheet thing. They use far less tritanium and noxium now, so they're much cheaper. I mean, I saw Eve appraisal comparisons, and at least the mineral price when the industry patch hit. I don't know if mineral prices are going to readjust, but it was something like 120 mil to build a Talos before, and it's like 80 mil to build a Talos after, looking at Eve appraisal mineral values in Jitter. So they're getting cheaper.
What about the new material required to build ships that we don't know the value of yet?
Battleships and up only.
Faction, it's for faction, pirates, battleships and up, and I believe T2.
Yeah, so the CCP intentionally wants battle cruisers and below to become cheaper and easier to build.
T1 battle cruisers.
Yeah, Tech 1, yeah.
Faction,
so the
pirate stuff off the table.
Sorry, we are getting off topic here, but the heavy battle cruisers, the ones with the large guns, they're different, no?
They're cheaper now.
Like-
Yeah, they're cheaper to build. Like by about 25% after the patch. Eve appraisal value.
Okay, well,
I've got it up right now. It's from like 2 weeks ago when the industry pages. Because I don't know if it's the mineral values have changed, but it used to be 120 mil to build a Talos. It's now 80 mil to build a Talos with ME10 blueprint. So it's cheaper to build a Talos.
are the guns, are large guns requiring special?
They haven't
anyways,
changed
this isn't the
Tech
time or
2
place to talk about this.
or modules. So like as far as
That's-
like they haven't published anything about modules. They haven't published anything about Tech 2 changes yet. So I mean, who knows? The Tech 2 blasters might become more expensive like at some point. I don't know, but the Talos hull in particular and all of those battlecruiser hulls are going to be cheaper to build. So it's going to be less ISK to lose for gankers.
Yeah. Do we see this as a problem? I know that CSM are very aware of this problem. We can ask about it again after this break that we're going to come up on. And I know CCP is aware of it. So maybe we'll find out a little more with Brisc Rubal, who's a CSM member. He's coming on next after this commercials. We also have Ron USMC together, a couple sides of the conflict in Delve and also in Legacy Space. So Ron and Brisc coming on next as we review the week's news and get an update on the war. We'll be right back after this. Quaif. Welcome back to Talking in Stations. We have the crew. We're going to talk a little bit more about ganking and then go into this week's news. But we have 2 additional guests that are off camera. You know them very well. First, we have from the initiative Brisc Rubal.
My triumphant return to Talking in Stations here Sunday. I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks, guys.
That's right. And we also have Ron USMC with us today as well.
I heard that Brisc was going to give us some accolades, so obviously I ran to the screen and to the microphone. I'm ready to accept.
Okay, let's go back to ganking. I think that, where did we leave it off? Rich, you wanted to talk about some of the calculations that happen?
Yes, the people who do high-tech ganking, they've got everything calculated. They've got they know the numbers. They've set up spreadsheets that they've given out to anybody who gets involved. And with these changes, I have a feeling that ganking is going to be cheaper, especially if T1 battle cruisers and anything T1 that is used in ganking reduces in price. For the more premium people who get involved in ganking using T2 ships, and especially T2 guns, I believe with
for the elegant ganker,
for the more refined, and for
the more refined ganker,
who are above using such petty T1 catalysts. Yes. For those, then I believe the prices for their operations may increase in the future.
Well, to be fair, price is not exactly an issue for these guys.
Yeah,
they're making a ton of ISK. And I think, frankly, the only thing that's stopping these guys from not doing more ganking is the bumping changes, which I have heard from them are very unpopular. But price-wise, I don't think that the changes are going to have a huge impact on what they do.
So, being on the victim side, the price of the gank or what it costs to actually do the gank is like nothing compared to what is getting killed. And it's been that way for a long time. So them reducing the cost from 10 cents to 8 cents or to 5 cents, it's not a big deal.
Well, I talked to Jason last weekend when they were Mini Love was up there killing all the freighters. I think it was in Udema or something. For 5 or 6 hours. And he said, I was asking him like what was going on, and he said, well, it's the bumping changes have really cut it down a lot. Now it's just when they just get together and they just want to go and do it for 5 or 6 hours. But Jason's price point is 500 million for him with a 50% loot drop. So he said 1 billion. If it's over 1 billion, it's worth it for him to give it a shot.
Yeah. Like they make the cost doesn't matter. They just have to figure out where that line of profit is, and if it's profitable, they go for it. If it's not, they don't. Well, generally speaking, there's the whole salt and tier factor and all that.
Yeah. Well, we have the Globby. I've seen him posting in Talking in Stations Discord, and he says it is a price balance thing. Now, I disagreed, saying. I've had empty jump freighters die, so there's no cargo in there. I don't know what you're trying to get out of a jump freighter that's so valuable that's empty. They said, there's only one
10 billion is kill.
There's only one person doing it that does it that way. So I think his contention is that it is about the money. It's not just about creating misery for other players.
Well, Goon Swarm's like ganking sig, they specifically go after like rival alliances jump freighter pilots, and they gank them not because they want to get loot drops from them at all, but they just want to kill the jump freighters so that the alliance loses that ISK, right?
Yeah, but I'm not in. I'm not. Cool. This is a while ago, and I'm not in any alliance at all. It's NPC, nor am I affiliated with anybody. Nor do people know my alts. But I know.
Ever since the war started, Goons actually went on a pretty big jump freighter ganking spree. Like even Volta, which are not really have anything to do with the war per se. Like we stopped using jump freighters in high sec. We actually started using DSTs and then taking them to low sec and then using a jump freighter from low sec just to avoid the Goons from ganking us.
Yeah. I'd say even if you are empty, you are not beyond the wrath of somebody ganking. Sometimes, a friend of mine who did an extensive amount of ganking, and he used the ganking to actually fund his AT ship. But sometimes when he was bored, or there was an especially dry night, and he was especially angry, they'll go gank some poor sod's cheap freighter with nothing in it. They'll do it just because they're angry. They do it for the shits and giggles. They will do it.
Content's content. I mean, that's the thing.
Content.
Like when you're bored and you want to do something, then you're going to do it. But I'll tell you, these guys make a ton of ISK, and it's great. And frankly, I think if anything, I think the bumping changes may have been too far in favor of the average player because it really hurt these guys being able to do the stuff that they do. And I think they play a valuable role. You want high-sec to not be safe, and this is one of the only ways that you can really interdict the really safe routes.
Well, to be fair, like you can just suicide a rookie ship on them every 15 minutes with a point to keep the freighter there.
These bumping changes happened 2 years ago. People are still getting killed. They're a problem. How?
It's not like it used to be.
It used to be a lot easier to kill multiple freighters one after the other because you could just keep like 3 or 4 bumped with like a single bumping Mac. Now you have to to keep a freighter there. If you're not already in position, you need to suicide a rookie ship on one like every 15 minutes to reset the bump timer.
It's every 3 minutes, but yeah.
My conversation with these guys was that it was much more social in the past. There would be more guys together doing it at the same time, and the bumping ability made it easy to. Right. This just made it a lot less social, a lot less of a thing for them. So they get concerned about it, and I think they've got a valid complaint.
Brisc, I think Dr. Evil's on the phone for you, buddy. Better get that.
Dr. Evil.
Yeah, that phone's ringing.
Well, for those curious, I have the a sheet detailing on how much it would cost and what mods would change what open. So if we switch that, I can actually show you just how much it would cost. Keep in mind, these are old prices. They are going to go down, but these are the prices and the amount of ships that somebody needs to gank something. So this can help you give you an idea of what you're going to have to deal with.
But is anyone going to do this? Besides the fringe, you know what I mean?
So
people run it real quick. It's just a matter of seconds.
So there's like a standard gank that you would deal, and X fleet can deal with Y target. You need to understand what the average EHP or what the maximum EHP of a specific ship is in order to be able to kill it. And then you also need to know what the minimum number of ships you need to kill that in a perfect situation to know whether or not X is a valid target, because you need to be able to kill it for it to be a target. So the reason this calculator exists is to figure out the minimums, but generally they exceed the minimums by a percentage to account for error or other issues. So a standard thing would be to have 5 tornadoes set up to gank marauders or battleships coming through. And then you wouldn't, the fleet isn't necessarily tailored to a specific target. The fleet is tailored to a demographic or a specific group of targets and will catch whatever comes into the net.
All right.
So if we take a look at this, problems
hold on.
with...
We're going to go way too long with too many people on this subject that wasn't even on the agenda here. But ganking, again, it looks like it might be more profitable than it was before. If that's a motivating factor, then fine. I have one last thing, and I don't want to leave it because Brisc dropped it earlier, and that is that high sec should become more dangerous. Does that make sense in a virtual world that high security space is more dangerous?
I mean, high sec's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
I think one of the things with EVE Online, one of the things we try to remind everybody about is that as soon as you undock, you are no longer 100% safe. And I think that is important for everyone to remember, regardless of the area of space you're in. You will be safer than high sec, and if you are killed, there is a 90% chance that the other side is going to be punished for it. But there should never be a situation where anybody feels like they're 100% safe anywhere in EVE, in my opinion.
I would agree
with that. Go ahead.
All right.
100%.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We'll leave it there and move into the last section of the show, which could also be a long one. We're going to go over the week's news. Usually we do this at the beginning of it. And we have with us Brisc and Ron to fill in some gaps on what's been going on there. I'm going to throw it to them first because we want to before we get going here, talk about this week in the war inside of Delve and inside of Legacy Space. What's been going on?
Well, at least from my perspective,
been in Delve? Or?
I haven't. Honestly, I was there last night for like 5 minutes. That's about it. I was in a cormorant and we got smart bombed, and that was the end of that. So that was the last bit I was in Delve. But
that was a quick trip.
So at least from the Imperium side, I think obviously we've seen a lot of structures in Delve are dying. A lot of keep stars are dying. Ron is killing a keep star 2 a day, which is what we expected. I think this is what would have happened in January had M2 not happened. We pushed it back, 4 months, but in the end, this was likely what was going to happen, given our current strategy. So the big play, at least for the Imperium, the big area we've been in has been clearing out the legacy regions in the backfield. So as of yesterday, last night, the last iHub owned by Legacy in Catch for TACO died. We've killed pretty much every structure in Impasse except for the 2 keep stars that are there, and we are clearing out Catch right now. We were in GE TAC last night killing stuff, and we've been doing that for a while. So that's kind of where we are, at least in that regard. We're trading time for, structures. That's what we're doing.
Ron, how's it going from your perspective? Test Pappy perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's going great on our end. They are over there, in Catch and killing lots of structures and iHubs, and I think they're playing the timers well, as well. And, they have time on their side. Bastion, is in North Esso, and they're playing their timers well. I think I would say that they're all just doing great work, and it's really kind of a race, right? Like, they're trying to kill as much as they can and do as much damage as they can before we finish, destroying everything that we can get our hands on in Delve. And that, is looking about, maybe 2-3 weeks from now, and we'll see where we're at then.
All right. So that's the war update on both sides there. Let's actually go into the news, and we'll review the week's shows that we actually did as well while we do this part. And on the 4th, that would have been last Sunday, we looked at 6 demolitions. I call them demolitions because they're not really contested with a fleet. It's hard to contest these keep star destructions in Delve. That was last weekend. 6 keep stars went down by Sunday. There was also a jump freighter that was concorded, which is weird because jump freighters do not have any offense whatsoever. So why would Concord kill it? Does anybody know how this was solved?
Was it in that Genesis constellation? I think it's called Sanctum in the Genesis constellation, where if you have bad standings to Concord, the Concord NPCs are the resident faction police?
No, the guy killed a pod, and then he jumped into a jump freighter and undocked wild flashy red criminal.
Okay. That's a pretty terrible.
That's kind of asking for it. That's amazing.
Yeah, okay.
So please be more careful with your pods, everybody.
Okay. So also on Monday, we talked about horizontal industry and what that looks like and how that may be a good way to go in the future if you're an industrialist. Now, vertical is when you own the process from the beginning to the end before you take a product to market. But horizontal is instead of focusing on harvesting your materials and building everything yourself, you buy other people's harvest and build the stuff yourself. You just do the final build, and you diversify in a horizontal way by buying products aligned with your initial product. And that might be a better way to proceed. You can see that episode with Servad that was on Monday the 5th. Amamaki happened this week, and that was on the 6th Tuesday. There's a surprise attack by Wrecking Crew in U.S. time zone on the Amamaki Keepstar because Snuff was finding refuge there, and they are at war, essentially. But Snuff was aware. Snuff started to make some plans, essentially was prepared to bait them in. So when Wrecking Crew attacked, the 50 Hicks heavy interdictors came and caught 7 of the Titans and destroyed them. Do you guys know about this? Suetonia, is this?
Yeah, I mean, I
friends?
wasn't in that fight, obviously. I'd seen it. It was a pretty bad loss for Wrecking Crew, obviously.
Yeah, it was a pretty good setback. That was kind of a punch to the nose because I think now they're reevaluating their situation as Wrecking Crew, and they're basically them fighting Snuff. I think is being looked at. I don't know how deep the injury is or what repercussions will come from it, but it wasn't a small loss. It was supposed to be a morale op, basically, to kind of get morale up, because Wrecking Crew has suffered a couple of significant losses recently. And to have your morale boosting op go badly, and it really badly, worse than the stuff that came before, that's got to hurt. So we'll see what happens.
Was it a morale boosting op? Like, I think they're pretty much trying to kill that keep star, because that keep star gives Snuff a ton of mobility around the area, right? And there's also a bunch of Snuff allies like Baltram who lives in there. So,
well, yes. I believe I had arranged and invited Baltram to discuss it. To myself, it seemed like what they were doing is a bit of a threat, a bit of a threatening move or warning, telling the operator of the armor market Keepstar that should you house our enemies, we will take action we'll endeavor to ensure that you don't house our enemies. And unfortunately, it was a substantial loss. To my knowledge, one small corp has now left Wrecking Crew as a result of this.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things I was most surprised about with this fight is any other time, besides the fact that we're in the middle of this big nullsec war, any other time you see a trillion ISK loss anywhere with 8 Titans down, that would be viewed as like a mega battle. And
we'd be talking about it for a month.
It would be a month, exactly, be a month's worth of content. But because of what's been going on with the war, it's barely a blip on the radar. Oh, only a trillion is killed? All right, well, come back when it's like 20. It's just funny how the last year has changed the scale and the perception of big fights in EVE.
What's kind of interesting about that fight is, so Wrecking Crew kind of made 2 errors, and this was an overflow from the Siege Green snuffed out over there, right? And they're fighting over the forts, and they're reffing Keepstars and all this back and forth, and Lantorn for Snuff's deployment. Wrecking Crew had a really big, well, I say Wrecking Crew, but that entire group, they had like 750 people there. But instead of hitting the Keepstar then, they waited like 2 hours, right? And everybody had gone home, so there was only a couple of hundred of them, left. And then they start hitting that, and their spies had assured them that Snuffed, and their friends weren't around in the kind of numbers, right? And that's what really set them off, right? Is like 300, 400 people in local, and they were like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see what happens there. We did have an interview with Baltram on the next, on Thursday there, and that was a really good interview. It was really insightful, so check that out. But before that, the day before, 1DQ was producing the hell out of, well, stuff. They were just on fire, right? It was like 4. Was it? Well, how much was being produced there? Do you guys have that screenshot? Like 4 trillion?
Is this a meme generation or industry jobs?
No, they were building like crazy.
They've been building a lot of battleships and caps, apparently.
Well, somebody said they can't build caps. They don't have something, but I think they can build caps, right?
They can build caps.
We got a Satalia there. Yeah, we're fine.
There's a Satalia, yeah.
There's a couple.
I mean, there's plenty of infrastructure left in the constellation around 1DQ1.
Well, I imagine if you have stockpiles of minerals right now, you just want to be putting all that into industry right now, because it will be harder to build bigger things later, and your mineral value may actually go down because minerals will be balanced with other materials in order to make things. So your minerals might be worth more now than they're going to be worth. In addition, they will exponentially grow in value if you make something with them. So make stuff with your minerals right now. And that's what 1DQ was doing.
Yeah, it also makes sense just to stockpile a bunch as well, right? Because there's probably potentially going to be like a really big siege in 1DQ1 in like 2 months' time or something.
No, that's not going to happen, is it? I don't see that.
Ron?
How many cube stars are there left in Delve now? Because 2 died this week, right?
It's about 21. I counted
4 spreadsheets with different numbers. Let me just double check.
Yeah, I counted this morning on that thing, and it was 21 21 left. Those include the ones with timers, including today. I think there's one today, and there's 31 destroyed. So they're about 2/3 the way through if you're looking for destruction of all the cube stars.
But let's be honest, everyone. There's only 5 left that matter.
There's 9. There's 9 in that constellation.
There's 5 in 1DQ, and those are their Alamo, right? And then there's, I think, another 5 more in the constellation spread out. And we have, I think, 6 or 7 outside of the 1DQ constellation. We're hitting 1 today.
Yeah, someone posted a website that shows. Yeah, you've got it on screen now. That shows like there's 7 that are on timer, and I think there's 10 that are in the 1DQ1 constellation that are mostly safe. Then there's 1 more that I guess you guys haven't hit yet.
Yep. Yeah, and that was a successful defense for them. Flipping the iHub, and that's kind of where the iHub flipping comes from. But I just want to give a shout out to AMOC. The UEXO CubeStar had a very special place in our hearts for it to die, because those guys fought every damn day. So it was a very big form up to kill that thing. So good job, guys.
And by those guys, you mean Big Bill.
Big Bill only accounts for 19 of them. The other, Big Bill's been out there doing great work. A lot of great fights out there. I mean, you hate to respond, you hate to do it, but then in the end, you're like, hey, that was a great fight.
Right. Okay, so 1DQ just becoming a massive, it's like red hot building things right now before this patch hits. So also we saw another freighter get destroyed. This was a typical freighter, and this thing died with a blueprint library in it, lots of originals. So they must have been researched, which don't show up on the kill board. So the real value isn't really listed, but it still came out to 100 million. So imagine that blueprint library. Sorry, billion, 100 billion. Blueprint library came out to 100 billion. That's not including all the time and effort that goes into researching these BPOs. So somebody could have lost, theoretically, we calculate between 100 and 500 billion ISK worth of blueprints.
The CEO of that alliance, WOMP, Thanak, we've had him on before, he released a video where he was, I guess he was a bit irritated, but the guy joined the alliance, lost a freighter, and then just vanished off comms. They've tried reaching out to him. He's not that angry about it. He's not going to chase the guy out. He's not going to blacklist the guy. He's, mistakes happen. It's just, it was quite surprising to him that somebody joined and then got onto comms and then suddenly lost it and then just vanished, out of the alliance, out of comms, out of everywhere.
It's like somebody comes in and destroys your kill board and then takes off. It's as far as the CEO is concerned, that's how he sees that, because that's a huge, huge loss. I didn't realize that was Thanak's Corporation Alliance.
Weapons of mass production, WOMP.
That's interesting. We interviewed him not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago.
It was especially surprising because they do have a jump freighter service. They would, and you can get straight to their WOMP staging system through HiSec. Albeit it's a bit dangerous, but you could obviously contact people for a ping and get people to escort you from Torino's EC PTAC 8R to their staging, which is only, I think, 2 or 3 jumps away. So it was,
That's really curious, right? I guess if you get blown up and it hurts your feelings a lot, you take off, like you rage quit. That makes sense. But if he was just a new arrival, it starts to get mysterious, doesn't it? Maybe I'm overthinking it.
Maybe it was like a goon psyop, like DBRB getting a Revenant killed in Modus Angels to ruin their killboard, because they always like freak out about their killboard.
Would somebody do this? Would somebody actually supply all of this? Put all in this effort? I think you're overthinking
it just wouldn't be surprising anymore. So many things have happened in the history of EVE that it just wouldn't be surprising anymore.
I think it's just a player set in their ways, and they just want to do something a specific way. And we see this, every month or two, right? Like a player, blah, 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 Triglavian's this or what Edencom that. And they go and they just die. And they're like, who cares? And then rage quit.
Yes, it was somebody newly joining. It wasn't any of like the Alliance or Corporation's assets, but it's very unfortunate to see this kind of mistake happen. And I hope they're able to get in contact with that player, and I hope they're okay.
Make sure they're all right. Yeah, actually, we did that with during the Amamaki incident. There was a friend of the show's. He's a new guy. He came around years ago. He's just a new guy. He's kind of working his way up. It turns out he was one of the victims. He lost a Titan in that. And so I was like, oh, that's awful. And I asked him if he wanted to talk about it. So he came on. Didn't realize his mic was open, but you could just hear all the sorrow in his voice for losing that ship that he'd worked so hard for. This wasn't something that was free or given to him. He didn't inherit it from another player. He literally spent years building up to that point to be able to use a Titan and to have it blown up when you really weren't expecting it to. This was supposed to be a routine fight. They weren't geared up to fight, head-on collision like an M2, for instance. So that was interesting. And people, funny enough, I'll just say it out there publicly. Of all people, the leader of Snuff contacted me and says, like, shame on you. How could you do that? How could you put a guy out there who just lost a Titan? That's a really bad experience. And I was like, he's a friend. He's a known quantity. I wouldn't just put up a stranger to embarrass anybody. And he's the one that came to me, basically. I didn't go to him. But I said, but you may have a point. I don't know what mental condition he's in. I mean, he's going to bed and he just lost a lot, so I will pull the video for 24 hours and I will talk to him in the morning and I'll check on him and see that he's okay. And he was. And I said, listen, I want to know if I should put this out or if you want this not to go out. And he was like, fine with it, but he put it out. So
look, let me talk about that for a second, because here's what I would like to say to anybody out there who has a Titan and is worried about losing it. There is no big balls move in EVE Online than dropping your Titan into a combat situation and losing it. Okay? And I say that having done that twice. And in both of those situations, I look back and yeah, it hurts. It sucks. You lost that thing. It was worth a lot. It took a lot of time to get it. My first Titan took me years to get. But the reality is, that's how you want them to go out. You went down that's fighting. It. You went down
Preach on,
fighting.
Brother. Do it.
That is what they're there for.
Yep.
You didn't lose it on a beacon. You didn't lose it because you got bumped off a tether when you were using it to you didn't lose it because you jumped instead of bridged. You lost it in combat.
Invited to a fleet. Some stupid
exactly.
shit.
You didn't get invited to a fleet and warped to the sun. You lost it in combat. There is no big baller move in EVE bigger than that. So walk away with pride and you're held up. As far as I can say, anybody that lost a Titan in M2, and I'm looking at me and Ron here right now, that stuff is, you're going to remember that forever. Your name's going to go down in history. You were there. You were in one of the big ships. I was like the first in it guy to die in M2, obviously. And I will take that away and say that's a cool thing. You are in a very elite brotherhood of people in this game that have gotten a Titan and lost one. And if you've lost more than one, like me and Sort and a couple guys, that's pretty cool. So just don't ever feel bad about it. If anything, you should walk away saying you got a check mark in your box that nobody else has. That's pretty cool.
I'm ready to drop more. Like, if it's a combat drop, let's go. Let's go. That's what you want. You want doomsdays firing and going up in smoke. It's just amazing.
I disagree with both you guys. I want to hold the asset and wait till it inflates in price and then sell it and use that money for something else.
Well, I believe
I'm sure happened.
I believe some people in Wrecking Crew have said that they're endeavoring to replace everybody's lost Titans in that battle, including his.
Including his, yeah. I did hear that. Okay, so, and then what else happened this week? Let's see. That was on Thursday. So Friday, Keepstar went down in YTAC 2. That's a very famous system. That is an entry system, border system between Delve and Fountain. So that's actually in Fountain. And you also had
that was a big fight. Okay. Remember, that was the original Goon Keepstar. I think that was no jammer, right? And there were a couple of incidents of a frat Titan, I think, warped to 0 on that, and there was, some kind of warp going bubble back and forth. It was
warped to 0. He got dragged, I think.
Yeah. It was a lot of.
What was Noros, by the way?
Oh, was that it?
Yeah, it was Noros.
Yeah, I'm still annoyed we didn't kill that.
Apparently, he was
really
fleet warping.
We didn't kill it.
Apparently, he was fleet warping 3 different Titans. One of them, and then they got dragged and they had to ping a fleet. And to my knowledge, he SRP'd every single fax pilot that died there and gave them additional bonus for their, excellent and courageous support.
Yeah, so it was right before downtime, and they got caught in a trap, basically, well played, and started getting pummeled by, I think was it bombers or
bombers,
or the structure itself?
We had pushed for bombers. The structure too, but we were pinging out bombers and trying to get everybody over there.
Yeah, so they started getting worked. The thing is, this is right before downtime, so all they had to do was run out the clock to downtime, and 2 of the Titans managed to jump out. I think 2 stuck around, and basically the faxes jumped in, sacrificed their life to be logistics and repairs for the Titans to keep them alive until the clock hit midnight or whatever, and the game shut off. And so they managed to make it there. So that's what the SRP was about, reimbursing those guys that came in and held the Titan together, walking it through to downtime. That must have been frustrating, Brisc.
Oh yes, trust me. Everybody was mad, and I thought we were going to get that Titan kill, but it's like, damn, you throwing up faxes on grid, and you keep that thing up, and it was only just a handful. It wasn't that long. It maybe was 20 minutes, but it was like, God damn it, I thought we had it.
Yeah. So that Keepstar. Sorry, that was Ron. What were you talking about? Where did that incident happen?
Well, that was up in Y2 in the beginning, towards the end of the Fountain portion. If you remember, I think, what was there, 4 or 5 Keepstars in Fountain? And the one,
5.
Where the server crashed. But Y2 is the very bottom one by the regional. And that was a really big thing, because that was where Init lost the 2 Titans that warped to the wrong gate, that sort of incident. And it was, just a big deal, because that was the final Keepstar in Fountain. And there was, the frat Titan that warped to 0. Who can name a more iconic duo?
Well,
right?
The biggest thing coming out of Y2, which is what you're talking about, the Keepstar fight there was the first time Pappy was set back by the Imperium. The second and major time would be M2. But in YTAC 2, there was a big fight where a bombing run by Sister Bliss and the Big Red Boat really wiped out a Raven fleet that was supposed to take out that Keepstar, and that totally lost them the fight. So that was a clean victory for the Imperium at that time. They had to restart that process all over again. In fact, I think they had to change their strategy. So Pappy, at that point, wasn't going to do it anymore with subcapitals. They called for their capitals and supercarriers to come up all the way from the lower front to the northern front to be able to secure the win for the next Keepstars in Fountain. That was a big deal.
Yep, it really was. It was a great fight. Yeah, a lot of fun.
And I think one of the things that's a hallmark, and I got to give the Pappy guys credit for this, is the one thing we have seen from them over and over throughout the war is when they make a mistake, they learn from it. I think that was a perfect example. That was one of the last times you saw them using subcaps to kill a Keepstar. After M2, the way that they move forward was completely different, and they've added steps and made sure that they're not worrying about jammers or cycling jammers on and off anymore. They're usually leaving the jammer on, getting sinos into systems around there so they can jump the gates and doing that, and it's making it a little bit safer. So I got to give them credit. They find creative ways to not make the same mistake they made before, and that I think is the hallmark of a group that's at least willing to learn. That's good.
Is this saying that you don't learn?
No, I'm just giving them credit for not doing the same thing over and over again. They could have easily said M2 was a server error. If the server had worked fine, then everything would have been okay, and they could have just kept going and doing the same stuff that they've been doing before. But they haven't done that.
So CJ1988 asks, is that when the server crashed? If you're talking about YTAC2, no, there was another Keepstar in Fountain where the server crashed, and that allowed the Keepstar to repair.
That was KVN.
That was right after YTAC2. So that was a technical setback, though. That was just unfortunate. It's kind of depressing to see the game fail that way.
I noticed that after the Battle of M2, tactics drastically changed, and things were, I call it, no frills. There was no more fun. There was no more bravado. It's all tried and tested textbook techniques that work. There's no room for error anymore. There's no room for playing around.
All right, last thing. Let's see. Freeport area goes down in MTAC-O. Rich, this is fraternity space. What happened here?
I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, that with fraternity taking over the tribute region, and especially MTAC-O, and the Keepstar now placed there, they have now placed down a T1 rigged SOTIO for manufacturing, cloning, and market access, and a T2 rigged Tatara for reprocessing and reactions. The service rates are really competitive. In fact, the cloning fees are 5 times cheaper than Amamaki. So
probably a lot safer too.
A lot safer. I'm not too sure. I know MTAC-O is a system well known for, given its close proximity to Empire space, a lot of conflicts. But yes, they're calling it the Polaris Freeport. Now it's in MTAC-O EE8. Fraternity is the person operating it. It's one jump freighter jump from Jita, and LowSec is next door. So people looking to potentially build stuff, this is a place to be. Neutral jump freighters are safe to dock. This is Norhouse's Reddit account. You have been given his assurances.
We should give a travel advisory, though, right? Like, it is
definitely
gate camped to hell.
Of course.
There's a gate camp on one side, and on the other side, there's a different gate camp. It's a different group. They got a schedule. It's gate camped.
And they do have a jump freighter service that they will offer to people who wish to use it. It is definitely gate camped. I have killed the people gate camping it, so get at me.
And they were already replaced. They didn't even care about that gate camper. They had another gate camper ready to go.
I think the idea is that you jump freighter in what you need if you're going to be supplying the place. Otherwise, you're just building their sourcing from nullsec itself. Because if fraternity does a good job managing like renters in the area, they can do a lot of harvesting that can coalesce into that local building area, as opposed to it going all the way down to Jita. And that's going to be attractive in the future when industry becomes more expensive on its own merits, but also because resourcing becomes harder. If you can actually create an area that has good resources, meaning all the ingredients you need to build something, and you can do it for a lower price, that's a good value proposition from a nullsec alliance, opening it up to the public. Good move.
I think this is going to be a huge competition against the production facilities that, let's say, LowSec might offer. I believe there's Space Detroit in Tama and other...
Space Detroit.
That's run by, I believe, somebody in No Handlebars who also has connections with Snuffed Out. So there's Space Detroit in, I believe, Tama and other nearby regions. But
yeah,
I was thinking, I wonder what the TTT is going to think about this. But then I realized, all right, Snuffed already destroyed their LowSec equivalent of this. So I guess they don't have that. They're not really doing that that service anymore, providing a low sec place to refine minerals and do reactions and stuff close to JITA. So I guess Neras is it. Well, I'd be interested what the big guys say in response to that.
Well,
it's hard to be the good guys, right? Like to give free services, but I'm always assured that there are people out there that are bad guys. that
good guys,
do the opposite.
What I do know is this. Given that people go to low-sec production to use its facilities, this is competition against the Amamake production facilities. I do remember in the interview that Baltram expressed frustration at the huge amount of fees he was having to pay for every dreadnought that they produced, and to the point where he even placed a structure down himself to save the money. Cloning fees there about 500,000. Right here says 100,000 if I'm not being lied to. So you're getting 5 times your run for your money there if you're going to start swapping clones. I think they might have some rules like don't PvP on tether range and such, but do keep in contact with people who are operating this if you'd like to use their facilities and see how they operate.
Okay, our last bit of news actually came in right before the show started, and that was something that came up on Reddit. It was, it looks like super carriers and Titans were smuggled out of 1DQ or taken out of 1DQ and sold to Northern Coalition to the tune of 1 trillion. And I thought, well, that's only 10 Titans these days because they go for nearly 100 million each. But these are old prices. So these are a lot of, see if we can get them up on screen there. This is saying that a Nix is not worth, 40 or theoretical 70 billion. This is it being worth 13 or 12 or 10 billion. So when you're talking about that kind of price point, that's a lot of super capitals and Titans that got sold from one side of the war in 1DQ to the other side. You guys know about this?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the dates, I mean, other than the last one that I saw, that Aeon that he linked in there, that was 16 bill. I mean, look, it has been a standard thing for years for people to get alts into goons and then buy supers and try to smuggle them out. It's a pretty common thing, and we try to crack down on it as much as we can, but it's inevitable in a group this big, especially when we're putting out as many ships as we are. But hey, you know what? You paid market value for it. Our guys made ISK, and we get to blow those ships up. So great. We'll see you in 1DQ.
Yeah, it's the old spy market, sort of thing, it's been happening for years. I remember like 8 years ago when PO bought up all the damn missiles in our staging kind of thing. But, in this case, they're buying, supers and they're doing it slowly. And shifting them out so they're not caught, immediately. And that's why the length. But yeah, now with this price increase, it's going to be worth much, much more value.
All right. Just a couple more things, and then we'll say our final notes here. And that is the hunt for, the Easter egg hunt thing that goes on EVE Online. It's an event that ends on the 13th. So you may want to get in on that before it ends. And we also expect that we will see the first wave of industrial changes, which would be the blueprints for the new reactions that come out, to probably come out on Tuesday. Also, I don't know if you've noticed on Test Center, there is new space phenomenon in the skybox. I didn't know what that was called until today. Is Suetonia still with us? Did he take off? I assume he took off. And so that means that there are some new landmarks in EVE Online that have graphics like space clouds or phenomena that you can see, like even the EVE Gate, I think. There's the polar radiance and stain. There's all kinds of things. I think there's just a handful, and there'll probably be more later on. You should check that out. It'll be coming to the game sometime soon. Now, Fate Bolus ransacked. This is something I didn't know about. Since we have Brisc here, Fate the Bolus being ransacked by Initiative, IGC have left Legacy to save themselves. What do you know about that?
So my understanding is the IGC guys were a renter group of legacies, and like any other renter group, when the owner or the people that are running the area change, they tend to go to whoever is the new owner. So that's my understanding of what's happening there. But I mean, it's pretty common. We've seen that in the North. Generally speaking, you can't expect the renter guys to want to do anything. But I will say that at least in this situation, from what I have seen and heard from the folks in IGC, it definitely seems like they got the short end of the stick from Test. They felt like they had been good renters. They'd done what they needed to do. They were in some of the big fights. They lost ships in the big fights, and they got no reimbursement. And then apparently, my understanding was Test killed one of their super carriers and did not reimburse it. So there was just a lot of animosity there. So I think that made it a lot easier for them to make the decision to jump ship and come over to the new owners of Faith Apples.
I actually made a Reddit thread last night because I was actually confused about it, because I saw they took tons of space in Faith Abolis. I posted a link to the Reddit thread in the podcast channel if you want to check it out, McLeod. But Villy actually responded in there. He says that they were renters, they're now neutral, and he wishes them the best. But there's also a response from a Russian diplomat from IGC as well, who says what Brisc just said basically is that they participated in battles against the Imperium, lost ships, and they never received SRP for it that they were maybe supposed to. And Test also destroyed one of their super caps that they didn't replace. Now with initiative in Faith Abolis and them being under pressure, they just decided that it was time to leave. Stop renting Legacy, I should say, right, and be on the side of in there at least.
Test, what's wrong with you, Ron?
You're so
mean,
expected, Ron. Like,
yeah,
one
Ron.
thing that has been kind of surprising to me, like on both sides, is we haven't lost as many people or as many corps as normally I would have expected. I always expect this sort of losing of the fat kind of thing. You're in war for so long. Some people just don't want to, right? And they're good and they just go somewhere else to do something else. But I haven't seen like a mass exodus like you usually see. It's been surprising to me.
And that's definitely true on our side too, because I remember I went back and was listening to some of the shows that folks did before the war started, a week or two before the war started. And I think everybody was of the opinion that as soon as the Imperium started losing space, that we were going to lose like 40% of our membership, because we were all dirty crabs and that's all we were there for. And as soon as we couldn't crab anymore, we'd go somewhere else. And that hasn't really panned out. I think both sides have seen groups leave and switch sides. But it's not been the kind of numbers that I think people were estimating before the war started.
Well, actually, somebody was saying that, I think there was this post that came out on Reddit. It was since deleted by, I think, the admins, and the guy was banned. But the post was that Goonswarm is stuffing alts in to replace the people that are leaving, which is kind of far-fetched.
It's not only far-fetched, it's just dumb. Why would we do that?
To have this stability narrative, I could see a tactical reason for it. But it seems kind of an extreme measure. But it's being pursued as a lead. We looked into it to see, knock this down, because we do that with all kinds of stuff that is erroneous, so that we don't get caught up in some kind of misinformation campaign. And our research was, this is not happening, so don't even mention it. I only mention it now because it's still being pursued. I think you will see more people putting forward their evidence on this. And then we'll have to look at that and see what happens. But
it's just to your knowledge, Reddit post matter of people looking at graphs on Dotlan and oh no, this happened.
And that's how I took it at first. That's why I wouldn't mention it. But now I actually know somebody who's putting together numbers and stuff, and they're showing me their numbers. We'll see.
The only possibility I would see for something like that would be some random small corp or something that is trying to pad their own little personal kind of numbers or something. It would, it would never be like on an alliance level or anything like that. Like, it's just silly.
And just for the record, whether it's morale or whatever you guys think potentially would be the reason why someone would do that, it's much easier, I think, morale-wise, to point out our activity numbers and things like that, rather than looking at creating fake alts to plus things. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand that there is a belief that the Imperium will go to whatever lengths we possibly can to push a narrative. But there are some things look, if it's not even something Fountain Frank would say was happening, then I would be very hesitant for anybody to argue that like it's legit. I can see, frankly, if you want to look at numbers, we could easily have plussed up the numbers just by talking about all the people we were recruiting into like Karma Fleet University or some of the smaller, the new player groups, and counting them. When it comes down to it, the whole idea that we need to fake our numbers to keep morale up. The morale's high regardless of what the numbers are. And frankly, if there are fewer people, that's not nobody's going to complain about that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if you want to know like who's around, you look at the participation numbers. You can just go to Z Killboard and check those numbers. Those numbers do fluctuate, but that's natural because some people will get a kill one week that won't get it the next. But as far as it being like, why would Goonswarm do that? There's a very clear reason. I mean, you yourself had a show where you pointed out Legacy's numbers dropping, and you kept going to each one of the alliances, I think 3 or 4, and you're saying, look at this slope, look at this slope. And that's obviously powerful enough for you to use against Legacy that it would be something you would want to defend against so that it's not used against you if you see a slope. So there is... But what was the impact of that?
But what was the impact of that on Legacy? Did anybody care? Did they really think that we? I guess it was just really entertainment. It's not that entertainment. I mean, it's reality. Look, the data is there. The numbers are there. If we're losing people, then we're losing people. And I think, frankly, it's easy to explain that when you have 2/3 of the game coming against you. Yeah, some people are going to quit. It's pretty standard. And I think right now, in terms of participation numbers, our numbers would look lower, mainly because a lot of our alts are not being used. My Titan alts have not been used in a while. So when we're not using super caps every day, some of our numbers are going to look, participation numbers are not going to look as high, even though we're still out there fighting all the time. But I just find it very hard to believe that there's any. I mean, at least I can say with a pretty solid confidence that there's no leadership backed thing happening to pump our numbers up so that they don't look bad, so we can cut down that narrative. I've seen no evidence
like
of that.
4 or 5 different things, and then when you get to the end, I can't go back and like discuss that. But 2/3 of the game coming at you pops out to me. No, because we don't have time to nitpick. But I just wanted to point that out, that there's a logic to it if it's true. It's probably not true. That's why the guy got banned from Reddit and whatever else. And you're saying it's not true, and I'll take your word for it and stuff. I'm just saying, look for another shoe to drop on it, because I think somebody's going to post something soon. That's just some insider information.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's happening. I don't think it's true. And you can look at combat numbers to get real numbers. I wouldn't look at population numbers at all. Ron, you were going to say?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just not a viable thing for leadership to ever want something like that. But I was just saying you should investigate us as well. But you should give Brisc a break. He. I can't. What are they going to say? Like last week it was they've killed more cores than us or something. Let them do their thing. It's all good.
Well, that's true. We did.
Yeah, no, you did.
More cores.
Well,
that's legit. Ron, that's legit. Listen. You guys can talk about killing all the keep stars you want. We've already written those off, and we wrote those off. As soon as you guys got to Delve, we knew we weren't going to be able to save all of them. And Mitten said it, and I said it, and we talked about it on the shows. It's fine. You guys want to talk about killing keep stars? That's great. One of the things that we were accused of, and I think there was a belief that we had to do war bonds because we weren't going to be able to core all of the structures in Delve, and that was absolutely true. And we did the war bonds anyway, but we weren't doing it to core the structures in Delve. We were doing it to make sure we had liquid ISK going forward. But some groups, namely the former owners of Ketch, were very proud of the fact that they didn't have to do war bonds, and that they didn't have to do anything. All they had to do was they got their cores and they cored everything, and that was great back 3 months ago when the belief was that Legacy was going to take all of our space and hold all of theirs. And since they haven't held all of theirs, it has been a pretty big windfall for those of us in the backfields killing all the stuff, because we get a payout every time we do it, which isn't true in Delve. So it's just that's a legit thing to bring up, and I think it's
totally fine. And I've been a big fan of cores, and that sort of thing. That makes it valuable, because I hate structure spamming.
He likes cores and cores like.
That's what I think it's great. Like, if I could just ask one thing from the Imperium, one thing, please put your infrastructure corporations on ESI so we can just make sure that we get the kill mails. Please think of the children.
Oh my god. Brisc, it is tough. Like, things aren't going necessarily well for the Imperium. I think that can be a fact, right? It's not the way you would have wanted it to go. But you do have to go out. As
Mitten says, we are being punched in the dick right now, and that is absolutely true, yes.
Right. Right. And you have to go on in front of a lot of people, 1,000 people who watch your show every time you go on. How tough is it for you to come out there and say, like, what can we say? Like, what kind of pressure are you under to deliver information and entertainment at the same time when a lot of the news is bad?
There's always pressure to do it. And I think one of the things that being a lawyer, the benefit is I have to be able to argue both sides of anything. So if I can't at least know what the bad guys are going to say and have our response to it, then I wouldn't be doing my job. But there are times when it's tough. Like, frankly, this week, one of the reasons, in addition to the fact that Mittens and I both got our vaccinations yesterday, and I didn't want to worry about the show when I might be feeling the side effects. That's why we didn't do it. But it's really tough when we sit there and we're like, what are we going to say? The news is the exact same as it was a week before or 2 weeks before. We're losing keep stars in Delve, and we're killing all of their stuff outside of Delve. So how many times can you say the same thing before it gets boring? And that's one of the things I always worry about. I don't want the show ever to be boring. I don't want anybody coming on there and saying we're just repeating ourselves, because that's not fun. And after a while, it gets old. So we like to have different things we can talk about. And that's why I'm hoping that we'll start seeing some movement into some of the big fights that we know are going to be coming, because that way, at least then, there's something interesting to talk about. But, it's not, there's always a silver lining. There's always an upside to anything. And none of these wars are at least this war so far has not been so ridiculously lopsided with no victories on our side that we have nothing to talk about. So as long as that keeps happening and both sides are fighting, we can talk about the things that we've managed to do. We'll have content for the show.
And to be fair, like it could have gone much better for you guys. You guys could have just cowered it out, right? And just ran, and nanny boo boo, right? Like, but you're not. You're sitting here fighting, and I think
well, they couldn't have run. They had too many structures. I mean, the Imperium came up to the north, and you could say that PL and NC ran. They abandoned everything, but they only had 10 keep stars or 15. I don't know. But they also didn't have a ton of infrastructure, since they were more nomadic. They were renting stuff out to other people. Those are the ones that took the brunt of it, I imagine. But Imperium is a whole different beast. They're empire builders. They have infrastructure. They built bridges. They put up structures, had nearly 4,000 structures. You can't just say, we didn't want those. We're taking off. Take it. We're going to go hang out over here in Scalding Pass or something.
Well, I mean, they could have said that.
I suppose they could have.
I mean, it could in the theoretical sense, but not could in the reality sense. I mean, look, we had spent 3 years plus living in Delve, building it up, building up Fountain, building up Quirius. We didn't have, we were empire builders, but we were not empire builders in the Bob sense or in any of the old school empire builder sense where they want to take over the entire game. We had our couple of systems, we built them up, and we wanted to do what we wanted to do down there. And I don't think anybody was going to be willing to leave without a fight. And I still don't think we're willing to leave without a fight now. We're going to make you guys take 1 DQ. You're not just going to get it. So if you come, and I frankly I don't think it's even possible, but that's a different argument for a different show when we have more time. But I think frankly, you know, that there was never going to be a situation where we decided to just leave. That was not in the cards in this war ever.
Ron, what do you mean it would have been better if they left and cowarded it out? Are you getting frustrated by the resistance?
Okay, so listen, all Shayak, you guys are a little clouded. So I'm arguing for the Imperium right now, right? And saying that it might be a little boring, but they could have saved their butts by leaving early and cowarding out, but they didn't. And that, you know, is something to be proud of, that the long journey, the hardest journey, is paying off the most in fun and exciting. It's like, I'm not, you know, saying bad stuff. Like, that's good for them. Like, they're here fighting.
That's an oxymoron, Ron. Ron
should be proud of it.
Ron speaking positively for the Imperium. That is not
like I always do.
Like we have both said nice things about each side today against popular perception.
Yeah. Isn't this funny? You guys are being the most polite and cordial with one another, and I'm the one in convict mode where I'm trying to stir up the pot. The world's upside down. All right.
Oh, and I just got PM'd that 3 of the 10 most expensive keep stars ever destroyed were up in Tribute.
They were in Tribute, yeah. They belong to NC.
3 of the top 10.
Yep. Yeah. I said 10 to 15. I don't know how many keep stars died up there. Do you guys remember? It was less, I think.
I know we killed 4 in one day. I want to say maybe 6 or 7. I was on 4 of them at least. It might have been 5, but I think there were 6 or 7 at the most.
Not 10 to 15, but more like,
I don't think it was that many.
Under 10. Yeah.
Until this war started, that was the worst losses of keep stars for any group.
Yeah. And that was terrible losses. It's just that the Imperium is, only now are we realizing the scale of Imperium. They've talked about it a lot, right? Like, hey, we have a ton of stuff. Come try to attack us. You'll die trying. And that only now we're realizing, like, what was it? 40? How many keep stars? 48 keep stars or something? Like,
we didn't even know. I don't think we even knew. At some point, it was so easy to build these things down there that groups put them up, and we were barely, people were barely aware that they were even there. Like M2 was one of those situations where I think people were like, "Oh, there's a keep star there." I had no idea. So I think it was probably closer to 48.
I think we've killed 34 so far, and we've lost 4, and there's like another however many to go.
That's right, because you lost 4 trying to get in. By the way, 4 keep stars died in the north. That's a lot less than I said earlier. So just scratch 10 to 15. I just didn't know, so I put that at the upper scale to be fair. And it was only like 4 or 5, I guess. And that's the glassing of Tribute that happened in 2019.
Right.
So the glassing of Tribute being 4 keep stars. Think about that for a second. You're doing 4 keep stars in a weekend in Delve, and that's not even that significant considering how much there was and is inside of Delve too. So every time I think, like, did the game need to change? Does scarcity need to happen? And you look at how many losses have happened in this war and how both sides are not even that hurt yet. They're kind of getting there, but they're worn out and they are facing some money issues, but it's ridiculous how broken the game was. And it's just worse than I ever thought it was looking at this war.
Well, so to be fair, the 4 that I was counting were the 3 that they did the Raven apocalypse on, and then the 1 in low sec. So I just trying to be fair, like how many we've lost since the start of the war. We've lost 4, and they've lost like 34.
Seems totally fair to me.
Yeah. You were using keep stars as ammunition. That's just
absolutely. That's the thing. Like we have been trading keep stars for time for a while, and it's given us a chance to lean down and get everybody prepped and ready to go and plan for this final assault. But look, the 1DQ fight is going to be a crazy fight, and the main reason it's going to be a crazy fight is because M2 has proven that numbers alone are not going to be sufficient in a system like ours, where, you know, all we have to do is log in and we can get 5,000 or 6,000 people online really quickly, and then the bad guys have to come to us. So I think, frankly, in the event that they try this and it doesn't work a couple of times, I could very well see a mission accomplished claim that, well, we cleared out all the rest of Delve, every other structure they have except for 1DQ is dead, we won, good game type thing. I know that some people are going to want to keep going, but if it turns out that it's not practically possible, I could see a lot of people accepting, claiming a victory and being willing to walk away, knowing that they were able to take the biggest group down a pretty significant way, which I think, frankly, is really all PanFam and those guys have argued is what they're there for.
Well, no, we're gonna take 1DQ eventually. Don't know how long, but we're going to be hitting it with a sledgehammer, and eventually it will crack. Maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. We don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, one of you guys is going to be right. You know, and either 1DQ falls or it doesn't. And if 1DQ doesn't fall, Imperium wins the war. There's just no other way of looking at it that way. And
that's the smartest thing you've ever said, Matterall.
All right,
no,
so that's completely untrue, but
that's just probably the thing you wanted to hear the most.
I stand by my statement.
But we'll know in a few months, or maybe, you know, as Kenneth said, maybe a year. It doesn't matter. We'll know like which way it is. But we can't really call a winner to the war. But you can say the game is still going, but the score is, you know, 50-25, and that, I think it would be a fair statement to look at it that way.
Well, I think you're absolutely. I mean, I would say, and I hate to do this because I know you guys get tired of my random references, whether it's Civil War or something else, but this is like a baseball game. It's not over till it's over, you know, and there's no time limit. When the game's over, the game's over. Until it's over, you don't know who won. Because somebody could be leading 10-1 until the bottom of the 9th inning, and then the other guy scores 10 runs, and boom, he wins. So we'll see. There's no timer on this war. It lasts until it's over.
Yeah,
I mean, the real winners of this war are everyone except for us, right? You have the biggest entities in the game beating the hell out of each other and draining our ISK, and everyone else, you know, is unaffected. It's really great for them, you know, that we're doing this.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure they're grateful, Ron. Gee, thanks for taking.
They should be sending you specific thank yous, Ron. I'm just saying. Yeah. Everybody, email Ron with a thank you for this war. You should do that.
And the last thing, Ron, you basically show up every day, stream hours and hours and hours, explain over and over what's going on. Like, you've done a phenomenal job of laying out like day in, day out progress. I almost feel like if somebody were to compile everything that you've streamed, like they would have just a living documentary of this war.
Yeah, and they should probably get a therapist.
Yeah, and they probably should if they watch that. But what do you, what keeps you going doing that?
All the new players that pop in, it's actually very much like a new bro corporation, you know, that kind of excited. New players, you know, they heard about it or they read a story and they're in, and, you know, they want to get more involved and they join the game. And I've seen, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people are now 3 months in and just having a great time.
Oh, come on. Be honest, Ron. You know why you're doing it. It's all about the crayons.
Well, it also pays the bills, right? So it's like a job. That's also super helpful.
Shoot, really? Nice. Well, everybody should definitely go to Ron USMC, subscribe, and follow and subscribe, and keep that good stuff going. And also watch the Meta Show on Sundays. It wasn't today, but you'll be back
Saturdays.
Next week?
We're back next week, next Saturday. Sorry. Saturday, 4 p.m., 2000 Eve time. Come and hang out and enjoy the show.
It's the biggest party in Eve. I think you clearly have the most amount of live viewers from all the shows combined. Even I think if you add up all the other shows, they don't even equal the amount of people.
It's pretty close. Show. I think the war has been a big benefit, and I think it's opened up a lot of different audiences we didn't otherwise have. But yeah, we typically do between 1,100, 1,300 viewers for the hour-long show on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, and I just want to say I love the character Aquarius George. That's my favorite character. I think created an Eve ever. That was a hilarious little.
He is a cheeky monkey, that Aquarius George. Let me tell you.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's good to have you two media guys, right? Not leaders of industry or whatever, but you guys both work in the media covering this, getting people acquainted with what goes on in this game over the long term. Thank you guys. All right.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, we'll bring you back.
Anytime.
And we should have you join TIS again. We'll write up a contract, and then you can come on as a panelist. We have to replace Elise, so you look good. All right, everybody. We have some business talk off air, but thanks for showing up and watching this show. We will be back next week. Actually, next week is our 5th year anniversary, and I get my second vaccination on Friday, which means I'm going to be laid out at least for a day. So I may take the entire week or rest of the month off. I'm still deciding that later on. So, stay tuned, watch next week. There may be the last week for a while. We shall see. I want to thank everybody that joined us today, especially our guests, Brisc and Ron. And of course, our staff here, McLeod as the engineer, and Sutonia and Rich and Hateless, who was on earlier, and Tiberius as well. Thank all you guys.
And Katia.
Great. And Katia, our guest. Wow, that was so long ago. It feels like yesterday. All right, we're about to sign off, but I want to give Brisc a chance to do some kind of a shout out, and same with Ron.
Thanks guys for inviting me back. I appreciate it. I got my chops started on this show, and I like coming around and saying hi to you guys. I'm sorry I couldn't be on camera, but I got my second shot yesterday, and I look like shit right now. So thank you for not making me blow everybody's brains with having a bad image of me with crazy hair and everything. So thank you guys for all that. And my big shout out is to Ron. I'm glad you were able to come on with the show with me, my friend. It's good to see you.
Ron?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to, for like me and Brisc or something to do like a wrap up or something, maybe every other week or something, because I don't know if we could occupy an hour every week, but maybe every other week or something. But
just 20 minutes.
I expect in the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's probably going to get pretty crazy. It's going to be like a knife fight in a bathtub. It's going to be wild, and I don't even know what to expect. So, yeah, and my shout outs to Brisc, coming back on TIS where he belongs.
Both you guys were TIS.
Yeah, that's right. Coming back home to our father.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time on Talking in Stations.